Hey, what's going on guys? Ash here, and the wait is finally over. Power Rangers Prime Issue 1 is out now. You can pick it up physically, you can pick it up digitally, and I highly recommend checking out this brand new series. So, if you don't know what Power Rangers Prime is, it's the next big ongoing Power Rangers comic book series released by Boom Studios, being written by Melissa Flores, and artwork done by Michael YG. And this first issue, it goes really freaking hard. Now, it is mostly setting up the lore and the world building around it, but what Melissa is setting up here is really freaking exciting, and I can't wait to see where this series is going to go next within the next couple of months, because she is setting up something very special here. So with that said, let's jump into issue 1 and talk about it. So the issue opens up with this mysterious voice talking, and we find out who this mysterious person is at the end of the issue, and we'll get into that in a bit when we get to the final page of this issue. But they start by opening up by saying this: do we really need heroes? Humanity has tenaciously clung to the idea that good will overcome evil. But if evil can be redefined as order, progress, then what signifies good? In what kind of world would a hero be created? So after that, we then cut to Angel Grove, or should I say New Eltar, buyer beware, and we soon see Lauren Shiva, who is on the run from the Eltarian forces. And we'll talk about Lauren in a bit, because there's a lot to go over with Lauren as this issue goes on. But Lauren's on the run from Eltarian forces, and she's soon cornered by them. And seeing how bad the situation is looking, she decides to morph. But seeing how the Eltarian forces see that she's about to morph, they quickly blast the morpher out of her hand, damaging it. And it's interesting how the Eltarians react, because they say that she's one of them and they're going to need to upgrade their weapons. But even with a broken morpher, Lauren just takes her sword and just starts going ham on these Eltarian forces and try fighting them off as much as she can. But she gets very injured during this fight, and she has to retreat, hiding in a dumpster. And this is where our main protagonist of this story ends up finding her, and this protagonist is Mark, or Markod, and we find out later on in the issue that they're from Aquitar. They're an Aquitian, so that's an interesting note. So while Mark is taking out the trash, Mark is soon discovered by the Eltarian forces, wondering what they're doing out here, and Mark says that they're a refugee, and they state their number, which is 082893. Now, when I first read that during the comic previews, I had no idea what it meant, but then a lot of people in the comment section were quick to correct me by saying that's actually the date that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers first premiered. So I like that little Easter egg. I like that little reference. But Mark quickly covers up Lauren after discovering her and acts like nothing's suspicious, nothing's out of the ordinary. So the Eltarian forces quickly take leave. After that, we then cut to Angel Grove University, and there's a lecture going on about the sort of history of how this world came to be. So these next few pages sort of sowing the seeds on how Eltar came to Earth, and history is a little bit muddled with what's going on, because we're going to kind of learn the backstory of what happened from two different perspectives going on throughout this issue. But one of the things we learn in this page, or one of the pages, is that Aquitar was destroyed many years ago. We don't know how. Mark just says that it was destroyed, which is why Mark is a refugee on Earth. So the next thing we learn from one of the lecturers is that 70 years ago, there was an alien invasion by the Beast Brigade from Gamma 7. So the Beast Brigade came to Earth, and it was like an invasion that Earth had never had before, so they didn't know how to defend itself. So Eltar, being the heroes that they are, they couldn't just stand by, and they ended up saving the Earth. Now, this is where the story gets a little bit muddled as well, because we find out that one of the people shaking the president's hand, or the president of Earth's hand, is Zardos from the Eltarian War. Now, at the end of the Eltarian War, Zordon ended up driving the Zeo Crystal through Zardius's heart, and we never knew what happened to him, except that he just disappeared. But it looks like that maybe that Zardos was transported to this brand new universe, and that's why he set up these new Eltarian forces. He was able to start again, and this way he's become a conqueror of these worlds. But because Eltar came to Earth, they helped Earth advance civilization many centuries into the future with all their technology, and that's where they are today. So That's an interesting part of this lore and flashback, but we're going to get back to that later down the line. So that's an interesting thing. Now, one of the other characters we're introduced in this issue is Jun, or June. I think it's pronounced Jun, but Jun is Eltarian as well. So Jun is friends with Mark. They kind of know each other, but we've got these two different perspectives from these different characters. Someone who was born on Earth after the Eltarian forces came, and Mark, who came to Earth, who was a refugee. So Jun and Mark, I do wonder what their dynamic is going to be. I mean, for all the previews and all the solicitations that they were putting out, like, Jun, it did seem like a menacing character, but we're only one issue in, so we don't know what their motivation is going to be moving forward. They could turn heel later down the line. That is yet to be discovered. Now, the next part is the very, very juicy part that I'm pretty sure you've probably seen online with the leaks that got out before the official release of this issue. So on the next page, we then cut to a track field where Jun is wearing this karate gi, and he's soon joined by this female friend, this female companion known as Valentina. And just looking at how she's dressed right now, you can obviously tell she's probably going to be the Yellow Ranger. I mean, she's wearing a freaking headband that's got the MMPR lightning bolt on it. So if that doesn't scream, I'm going to be a Power Ranger, then I don't know what is, but we did find out that Jun's mother is one of the Eltarian admirals, and I'm sure that's going to cause a lot of friction amongst everything going on. But one of the characters we're introduced is this character called Ryan, who's got blonde hair, blue eyes, and knows karate. I wonder if that sounds vaguely familiar to anyone. I wonder if anyone's thinking of another Power Rangers related series right now as I bring that up. Could it possibly be? No, I'm not going to dance around. This is freaking Ryan Steele from VR Troopers. So let's cut to the chase. So the VR Troopers are actually in this brand new Power Rangers universe. Now, I'll probably have to eat my own hat or my own socks about this, because I thought, and I was thinking, and I think I've gone out and said that we'll probably never see like something like Masked Rider or VR Troopers in the Power Rangers comic universe when it comes to suits, because Ryan Parrott did name drop them at one point when they were trying to find out who was going to be the next Green Ranger. But here, this is the suits flat out in this brand new universe. So what Melissa has done, she has basically opened the floodgates for this possible connected universe when it comes to like all the Saban shows from back in the day. If VR Troopers in here, then Masked Rider is no doubt lurking out there. Well, Masked Rider's universe has always been around in the Power Ranger comics, because we did see King Glaxion in the comics as well. We just never saw Dex or Masked Rider, which I always assumed was due to copyright reasons. So when Melissa gets to do an interview, I can't wait to find out what was the thought progress into having the VR Troopers in the Power Rangers comics, because I assumed it was a licensing thing, is why they probably couldn't do it, but this opens the door for so much later down the line. But like I said, we do meet Admiral Janessa, who is Jun's mother, I believe, and it looks like there's some friction between the two of them, and it does seem like that maybe she wants Jun to join the sort of troopers, which is being the VR Troopers. But after the VR Troopers reveal and the Jun family dynamic going on, we then cut back to Lauren, who is in Mark's apartment, and she's soon greeted by Orion. Yes, the same Orion from Super Mega Force, which it's interesting to see him as well, because he's also a refugee who's on this planet as well, but it looks like he's kind of hiding out in a way, because, you know, he kind of lays low, and at the start of the issue it looks like he's not like the kind of guy who goes out the track, check the trash or put the trash out and stuff like that, according to Mark's complaining. But yeah, we do find out that Orion's here, which is an interesting touch, because Orion from Super Mega Force, we're going to see him in a brand new light in the comics, but his planet does get name dropped in this issue, but we don't know what happened to it. So I can assume that it was most likely destroyed. I think it was destroyed, because he did say that he's not a fugitive, he's a refugee, but there's no planet for him to go back to. So I'm wondering if the same events played out like in a Super Mega Force, or where he found the Morpher in the end, or did his planet get invaded much like Mark's planet with Aquitar, and he had to take refuge on Earth where there's a bunch of Eltarian forces in the end. So there's that to sort of go over and speculate with what's Orion's backstory in this comic. So Lauren does explain her backstory in this comic, and it's quite the interesting backstory because we do get the lore of Power Rangers Samurai where she goes over by saying, my ancestors were given a special responsibility, we used morphers to tap into the morphing grid, we would become Power Rangers, and for generations my family would protect the Earth the best they could. So we get all these different time periods of these Samurai Rangers fighting off all these different monsters. One of them is in medieval London, so you get this night setting going on, and then you get colonial United States where they're fighting this giant monster as well, and then we cut to the United States in 1954, and that is when the Beast Brigade came and the Rangers fought them too. But the Beast Brigade was so powerful that Eltar had to arrive, and Eltar saved humanity. And that's when Eltar decided to stay, like the Eltarians decided to stay on Earth. So what Eltar did, they colonized the Earth, and Eltarians didn't like Rangers that much. I wonder why, when you have someone like Zardius leading the charge. That's kind of suspicious, don't you think, with how the history is being told? But Lauren goes on to say by saying, they hunted us down, they took my family, and ever since then I've been running. So this looks like it's been going on for a while because you see a young Lauren on the run. So it looks like for the past couple of years, Lauren has been on the run as Eltarians have been sort of, I guess, rounding up Power Rangers and sort of getting rid of them. So Eltarians are sort of trying to erase Power Rangers from existence, as they're trying to be the dominant force within the galaxy, which was something that Zardius was trying to do with Eltar. So, I want to see what the heck is going on with Zardius because I have so many questions. So while Lauren's telling her story, you've got the Eltarian forces still looking for it, and they're getting closer, and they're sort of making a move around Mark's apartment. Now, Mark is soon interrogated by one of the officers because, Mark was last on the scene when they were looking for her, and although Mark's almost slips up and he nearly gets interrogated fully, I don't know if he would have cracked, but hey, there's that. But you can tell that the Eltarians are quick to sort of judge him because he's a refugee. But then Jun steps in, and Jun's by saying, hey, look, if he says he didn't see anything, but he didn't see anything, leave him alone. So Jun kind of saves his ass there, and he even says, I saved your ass there. So because I saved your ass, refugee, you're going to tell me everything about the Power Ranger you're hiding in your apartment, which earlier I didn't bring this up, but it looks like Jun is sort of probably possibly doing research on Power Rangers because, apparently they're a myth in this brand new universe. That's probably because Eltar is kind of trying to probably cover them up and sort of erase their existence like they were ever a thing, or make them sort of this mythos that existed in their universe, they're the possible bad guys, that's why they're getting hunted down. But suddenly there's an explosion and something comes falling from the moon, and as everything's sort of trying to see what's going on as this asteroid is falling down, you have this space dumpster that conveniently lands in the same dumpster that Lauren was found at the start of the issue. But the dumpster hits the ground and someone slowly crawls out of it with this sort of paint on their fingers, and you see white silver hair, and they say, interesting, a brand new world. After so many years, I'm free, and it is none other than Rita Repulsa. And that's where the issue ends. That's where issue 1 ends. And that is a crazy way to end it on, because if this is the same, no, I don't want to say if this is most definitely the same Rita Repulsa we saw at the end of Darkest Hour. And now they're in this brand new universe. And I have so many questions. I have a million questions, and I'm going to have to wait a month until issue 2. I'm going to have to wait for more solicitations. Melissa did a really good job for this very first issue. This first issue was really fantastic. The artwork was amazing. The storytelling is all this world building and setting up. We've got VR Troopers in this Power Rangers comic universe now, which probably opens the door for a lot of things like Big Bad Beetleborgs, Knights of Tirana Bog, so many other things, we could possibly see in this brand new Power Rangers universe. Like, I have so many questions, but that was Power Rangers Prime issue 1. What did you guys think of this issue? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. With that said, I'm going to bring this video to a close. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will see you guys later. Peace. So last month, we had the premiere of Power Rangers Prime, the brand new Power Rangers comic book series released by Boom Studios. And issue 1 of Power Rangers Prime came out the gate swinging, and it had fantastic results within the fandom. People are loving Power Rangers Prime from what I've seen online. Like, this is getting a lot of love from the fandom. Some people aren't fully on board with it, but hey, it is what it is. They're missing out if they're not going to read Power Rangers Prime. But issue 1 sold out within the first couple of days upon release, but it got a second printing, and by the time this review drops, that second printing is out now along with issue 2. So if you haven't read issue 1 yet, or you never got a chance to pick up issue 1 yet because it's sold out, you can get a second printing of issue 1 of Power Rangers Prime. But Power Rangers Prime issue 2 is out now, and it's setting up some really interesting things moving forward within this first story arc within this brand new series. So we've got our conflict, we've got our villain, we've got our lore and our world building, but I feel like there's a lot more to be discovered with this brand new world in the Power Rangers Prime universe. I mean, there's a lot of untold answers and not a lot of full stories going on with certain narratives being spun by the people of Eltar. I feel like this series moving forward is going to be a wild ride, and whatever Melissa has planned, I am full on board. I am strapped in, I'm ready to go and see where she's going to take us on this brand new Power Rangers adventure, because the sandbox is now open and she can do almost anything she wants with this brand new Power Rangers series. She doesn't have to follow the canon of MMPR and the 30 years of Power Rangers history. This is a brand new universe, so she can do almost anything she wants here with this brand new Power Rangers universe. Yeah, we're going to see some familiar faces. Yeah, we're going to see some brand new familiar faces, but Power Rangers Prime is no longer tied to the tether that was MMPR. It's like with Dragon Ball, how Dragon Ball, or Dragon Ball Z you could say, is always like stuck between that sort of in between, like after the fight with Majin Buu and before the World Peace Tournament, where we first get introduced to Pan. And that's kind of the situation that Power Rangers was kind of stuck in for some things, where you kind of had to follow the canon, but you couldn't do anything too crazy here and there. But now we've got a brand new sandbox to use, and I'm excited to see what castles and structures we're going to see with Power Rangers Prime. Weird analogy, I know, but let's talk about Power Rangers Prime issue 2. So last month's issue ended with Rita Repulsa landing on Earth. Now, I'm under the speculation, is this the Rita Repulsa from the old 2016 Boom Studios Power Ranger comic universe? Because the last time we saw that Rita, Lord Zed locked her in a dumpster, then we never saw her leading up to the big finale of Darkest Hour, so we don't know what became of her fate. So when Billy caused a shattering, did she somehow get transported to this brand new universe? It's really hard to say. But then you read some of the dialogue that this Rita is saying, and it's hard to tell if this is the old Rita from the previous universe or this is the brand new Power Rangers Prime universe Rita Repulsa, which is going to be a mouthful to say. But we'll just call her Rita for now. Like, I'm sure later down the line we'll get a confirmation. Is this the old Rita? Is this a new Rita? We're not entirely sure. So we'll find out later down the line. So it's hard to speculate at this point. So, Rita Repulsa crashes on Earth and she finds Lauren's damaged samurai morpher. Now, one thing to note is that Lauren had her morpher destroyed in the first issue, and all the promotions, all the variants, all the covers of Power Rangers Prime, we see Lauren in this brand new Super Samurai form when she morphs, where you kind of see she's got these fingerless gloves going on, she's got this more traditional samurai uniform going on. It's a really freaking cool design, I love it. And I get the feeling that because one of the covers is Rita and Lauren teaming up on one of them, I get the feeling that Lauren is going to get her Morpher repaired by Rita, and because the Morpher was damaged and it got repaired by Rita, that's why she's going to be taking on this brand new Super Samurai form. Or because New Universe, the form is going to look a little bit different. Either way, I'm excited to finally see that form in action when we get around to it. But Rita finds Lauren's old Morpher, which is definitely going to be a big contender moving forward within the next couple of issues, because she can use that Morpher with the Morphin Grid energy to enhance her magic. So Rita is soon confronted by the Eltarian forces as they investigate the crash site, and one of the Eltarian soldiers who is going to be a big major player within this storyline, I'm guessing, is Bulk. So Bulk in the Power Rangers Prime universe is very different compared to his usual counterpart we've seen within the mainline story. You know, Bulk's usually like a heavy-set guy, he's got a bit of a gut. In this universe, he's kind of buff and pretty well built because he's an Eltarian soldier. And I know that some people, when I talked about the preview pages, some people were saying, I don't know how I feel about Bulk being buff. Well, the term bulk can mean like you're either bulky, like big and heavy bulky, or you can be bulky, like muscly bulky. So I'm guessing that's why they call him Bulk in this universe, because he still goes by his full name, you know, Bulkamir, within this universe, but they also call him Bulk. So he's got that going on. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the Eltarian forces try to arrest Rita, but Rita's having none of that. She immediately goes on the offensive and she says, hey, I've been sealed for a couple of 1,000 years, time to try out my magic to see if I haven't gotten rusty. And what she does is she uses the damaged Morpher to create a monster, and it creates this fire monster. Why? Well, if you look at the Samurai Morpher, it has the kanji for fire on it, so of course it's going to create this fire monster, which is really neat. And the artwork done by Michael here is really freaking great. Like, the page where we see this big giant fire monster behind Rita, it's almost like she's got a JoJo stand behind her, or it's like this giant phoenix force that she's summoning. Like, the artwork for that monster here is freaking amazing. So Rita right away goes on the offensive and she makes short work of all these Eltarian forces. They are no match for her. Now, one of the generals is able to get a good hit on her and scratch her face, but Rita makes short work of her as well and takes care of them immediately, which is freaking crazy that like Rita in this brand new universe is knocking everyone around, which would make sense because, you know, this is military forces. They're dealing with magic right now. So if they haven't dealt with magic in this universe, or they haven't been well equipped for magic, of course Rita is going to run circles around them. But not only that, Rita was a well-known villain, the Empress of Evil. Don't know what she did in this universe, but I can assume she was the Empress of Evil in this universe. So, of course, she's going to be running circles around a bunch of Eltarian forces or soldiers. So, I do wonder how she's going to fare up when she goes face to face with the VR troopers, which would be an interesting interaction to see when Melissa gets around to it. Because, you know, if this Rita knows about Power Rangers, then how is she going to react to seeing VR troopers within this universe? Because I get the feeling when we see Rita interact with VR troopers and she realizes that she hasn't seen anything like this before, that might be the hint that this is either a different Rita or this is just a Rita that's been sealed away for a long time that's got a totally new design going on for it. But like I said, Rita is able to wipe the floor with all the Eltarian soldiers, and the last one standing is Bulk. Now, the whole reason why Bulk is left alive in this situation is because when Rita's gloating about how she could probably rule this universe with how easily she wiped out the Eltarian soldiers, the monster goes to turn on her and it goes to attack her, and Bulk tells her to get out of the way, and Rita delivers a kick to the face, which is kind of cool to see within itself because, you know, Rita's never really done hand-to-hand combat. She's mostly used her magic or her magic wand, so to see Rita deliver a kick to the monster was a really cool image to see. So, because Bulk saved her life, Rita decides to bring him along because she comes to the conclusion by thinking, hey, if this monster could try to kill me, then the next one could possibly succeed. So I might need to work on my magic a little bit, or not so many monsters for a while, because things might not end so well for me. So she decides that Bulk is going to tag along because Bulk was the one that saved her life. Now, upon the rooftop, Bulk and Rita have this conversation where Rita tells him, saying, hey, the Eltarians have stripped your identity from you. You wear their uniform, why do you help them? And Bulk replies by saying, I just wanted a government job. It's got good benefits. Which is kind of understandable because, there are some people who join the military for the benefits in the end. And Bulk was one of those people who joined the military for the benefits, from what he says. But if we know Bulk from the main Power Rangers universe, he's overall a good guy deep down. So I'm sure he has his other reasons for wanting to join the Eltarian forces, probably wanting to help people or help his own kind or just help everyone in the end. So that's probably Bulk's whole purpose for joining the military forces. But then again, if that is his reason, I'm not surprised, because Melissa did mention in an interview that because Eltarians look down on the human race, whereas some humans that live in the slumps and the ones who are in the Eltarians' good graces or they have good jobs working with the Eltarian forces, those families are put in better cities, better resources, better housing and stuff like that, because they're getting the Eltarian treatment for being their lapdogs. So that's probably why Bulk might have done it as well, not to help himself out, but to probably help someone he cares about as well with those benefits. Now, Rita does give Bulk this weird choice to make within his life moving forward, where she says, hey, you can choose to remain a subject or you can choose to be free. So I do wonder what Bulk is going to choose moving forward. I get the feeling that he's going to be hanging around Rita within this next couple of issues, and we'll see what path that leads him on, because I guess he'll understand what the Eltarian forces are actually like and how they actually don't care for the human race and how they find the human race probably disposable. So Bulk is probably going to go off and do his own thing. Maybe that will lead to him being a VR trooper or something later down the line. No idea. But I do wonder where this Bulk story is going to go with Rita later down the line. So it looks like Rita is going to string him along, and I am curious to see how she's going to string him along and how that will shape the Bulk in this universe moving forward. Alright, that's the Rita side of things. Now let's move on to the Mark and the June and the Lauren storyline within this issue, because these events happen on the exact same night while everything is going down. Now, exactly what the last issue picked up on, you had Mark's apartment about to be raided by the Eltarian forces because they're still on the hunt for Lauren, and John is deciding to help Mark out. Reasons unknown exactly at this point. He seems to be knowledgeable of Power Rangers in this universe, so I guess that John's motives moving forward will sort of come into light over the next couple of issues, but I am curious to find out why he's helping Mark in this situation. But one of the things that Mark points out in this issue is there are detention centers in this planet Earth for refugees, but one of the lines that Mark says is, can you imagine where they put the people who are actually threats? So while this is all going down, you have Orion and Lauren, they're just chilling out, they're watching TV, and they get a knock on the door. And when they get the knock on the door, Orion comes up with this plan to pretend he just got out of the shower, and then his dog runs out. So he says, oh, you Eltarian forces, you made my dog escape, you gotta help me chase it now, or you gotta chase it for me because this is your fault. And the Eltarian forces, they understand they messed up, so they're quick to comply and help out, and they chase down the dog in the end. So this lets the others escape and go to John's apartment. Now, one of the interesting things to note about Mark in this issue is because he's half Aquitar or half Aquitian. If you remember in Alien Rangers, the Alien Rangers needed water, and they needed water to survive because they couldn't breathe the earth air on this planet. Now, one of the things that is introduced in this issue is this inhaler that Mark can use, and that sort of gives him the water that he needs to keep breathing on this planet. So I really like the design of the inhaler. I think it looks really cool indeed, so that's going to be cool moving forward, I guess, but I really like the design. So everyone takes refuge at Jun's apartment. Now, Jun's apartment is located where Mark's apartment is. It's basically the same building, but because Jun is Eltarian, they get all the good shit. They get all the fancy stuff going on with everything. So Mark is sort of embracing everything around him, just sort of awed by all the sights, by all the view. So he's kind of taking in everything around him. There's even this line where Jun says, hey, just sit down, and Mark's like, no, I think I'll stand. Now, Lauren and Orion eventually show up, and one thing to note is when Orion puts on a spare shirt, it says Sloan, as in Tanya Sloan, and I'm guessing Tanya exists in this universe as well, and it looks like she's a musician in this universe as well, because there's a billboard later on in the issue where it says, have you seen the new Sloan EP, or have you heard the new Sloan EP? And this is the gathering of our heroes. I guess this is where everyone comes together, and they'll soon form an alliance moving forward with everything happening, especially how this issue ends, but we'll get to that in a bit. So this is where Mark and Lauren actually meet each other for the very first time, where Lauren thanks Mark for taking her out of the dumpster, and she says, that was really brave of you, and Mark's response is, well, I didn't know you were a Power Ranger, and Lauren's response is like, oh, okay, and then Mark's like, but I still would have done it regardless. So this is where tensions begin to rise as Valentina soon gets home after her cancelled date with Ryan Steele. So just to double, triple confirm, yes, this is Ryan Steele from VR Troopers. The VR Troopers are in this Power Rangers universe. Now, Valentina is not on board with this plan. She's not on board with this plan at all. And she's about to call the cops. And Lauren's response is she kicks the phone right out of her hand, and then moving forward, she goes to kick frickin' Valentina across the face. Like, it's really freaking awesome. Like Valentina tries to grab her leg, but Lauren just kicks her across the face. It's pretty freaking cool. There's almost a throwdown between the two of them, but it's soon broken up, and Valentina leaves, where she's not cool with them harvesting a fugitive. So the next day, you've got Jun trying to sort of rectify the situation. He's trying to text Valentina, but she's not really responding, and I do like Jun's response when others are asking, can we trust her? She did seem pretty pissed off. Do you think she'll contact anyone? And Jun's response is, she's my best friend, don't insult her loyalty. Now, Lauren does question Jun here by saying, hey, look, I'm a ranger, you're Eltarian, why are you helping me? And Jun doesn't even give that a response. So there's that as well. Like, we still got to find out, like, what is Jun's fixation on Power Rangers? Why is he helping Lauren? Is there a sinister motive behind this, or is there something else going on? So, like, Jun's motive, why he's obsessed with Power Rangers, why he's helping Lauren, is something I want to find out moving forward. Like, what the heck is this guy's motive? Because even Melissa did say that Jun is kind of like rebelling against like the Eltarian sort of nature or the ways of things, where some Eltarians shave their head as a rite of passage. Jun still has hair, so there's that going on. So Jun, like I said, it seems like Jun's a good guy so far, but they could sort of switch it up and turn heel within the next couple of issues. It's hard to pinpoint what their motive is. They seem like they're doing good things, they seem like they're helping, but is there something else behind all of this? So Valentina the next day gets in contact with none other than her boyfriend Ryan Steele, and in the last page you see the other VR troopers getting together. So this does confirm that the other VR troopers are Caitlin and JB, the VR troopers from the TV show, and they have to sort of halt their mission trying to hunt down Rita Repulsa, and what they plan on doing is they're going to bag themselves a Power Ranger, and you see them preparing to morph. And that is where the issue ends. So yeah, that was Power Rangers Prime issue 2. Overall, I thought it was a pretty solid issue. It looks like that Melissa is setting up the chess pieces on the board within this first couple of issues. Like, she's setting the status quo, she's setting up the universe, she's setting up the characters. So things with pacing might feel a little bit weird, but I understand that this is a brand new series, so you have to set up sort of like everything within this new universe. This isn't like the original 6 Rangers we had from Mighty Morphin, where we know what these characters are about, and we can have a conflict within like the first couple of issues. This brand new universe, this brand new story, it's got a sizzle, it's got a cook, and is slowly setting things up. And like I said, this second issue is slowly starting to move those chess pieces into play, and moving forward I feel like things are going to be ramping up as we get into 2025 as Power Rangers Prime continues. But overall, what are your thoughts on Power Rangers Prime issue 2? Did you love this issue? Did you hate this issue? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Definitely stay tuned for some more Power Rangers Prime related content in the nearby future. I feel like there's a lot I want to do with these reviews, sort of do Easter egg videos, do more theory crafting like I did with issue 1, and within the weekend of issue 2, I believe we'll be getting solicitations for issue 5, so we'll be getting more hints of things to come later down the line in Power Rangers Prime moving forward, so definitely look forward to that. So with that said, I'm going to bring this video to a close. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will see you guys later. Peace out, take care, and bye. So Power Rangers Prime issue 3 is finally out now, and this issue once again was another fantastic issue from Melissa and Boom Studios. The artwork was really great, the writing was really great, and of course it's setting up a bunch of stuff in the background that you really have to pay attention to with what's going to be important moving forward within this story. And there's some things that you blink and you miss it or it goes over your head, but this issue was once again another fantastic issue. So let's get into Power Rangers Prime issue 3. So the issue opens up with a flashback over 2 years ago, and Mark has begun starting his internship at the Angel Grove Museum, something that's a very special privilege to him because the Eltarians have this such a tight rule over Earth that if you're a refugee you don't get special privileges like that. The Eltarians are the superior race, so anyone who's not from Earth or not Eltarian, well, they're kind of at the bottom of the food chain. So Mark has been given this very special opportunity. Now, within the background where Mark is getting the info bomb from one of the workers there, you see some really interesting figures in the background on this one page. And I don't know if it's an intentional, I don't know if it's a cameo that Michael might have thrown in there, but you see this person in this military uniform, and beside that person in the military uniform kind of looks like Grace Sterling if you look at the haircut. So is Grace Sterling in this Prime universe, or is this just a fun little cameo? I honestly don't know. But Mark gets the tour around the Angel Grove Museum and he notices this door open, and the workers quick to say, oh, you can't go in there, that's only for certain people. Don't abuse your little privilege badge that we gave you because we don't want this opportunity to get taken away from you. It'd be really sad. And Mark's like, all right then. But then on the next page, once the door's closed and you see what's inside the room, you see a power coin. More importantly, the Triceratops power coin, which raises a lot of questions within this universe because it is the Triceratops power coin. So that was Billy's old power coin. That's what a lot of people identify it as. Again, this is a brand new universe, so we don't know who created the power coins in this universe. Was it Ninja or was it someone else? But how did the Eltarians get a hold of it? Because when you look at it, it looks like it's been torn apart. It looks like it's been shattered. So this power coin looks like it's been through the rigmarole with all the damage it's taken, and it looks like it's slowly being pieced together or it's being dissected for further study. So how the heck did the Eltarians get this Triceratops power coin? That is the main question on my mind. So back in the present day, Valentina has returned to Jun's apartment, and it looks like she's going to be helping out our heroes after all. But she does give a warning to Jun by saying, hey, your obsession with the Rangers has escalating into you harboring a future. You kind of need to stop this. And I am curious about Jun's obsession with Power Rangers and stuff like that, because it hasn't fully been explained, and I'm sure we'll get an answer within the next couple of issues with why he's so obsessed with the Rangers, why he has a fascination with them. But I'm sure we'll get that flashback later down the line. So I can keep asking questions for hours, for days, within every single video, but I'm sure we're getting that character backstory later down the line, probably within the next issue or so. So we'll definitely be seeing that in the nearby future. So after that, you have Valentina reintroducing herself to Lauren and trying to call a truce, but they are still butting heads as Valentina wants to get rid of Lauren soon as possible. And Lauren's like, look, I'm not leaving until I get my family back because apparently they're in a detention center here in Angel Grove and I'm not leaving without them. And Valentina's like, great, now we're going to do a jailbreak. That's going to go just fine. And Lauren says, I'll leave you out of it. I just need my powers back. And then Valentina snaps back by saying, look, you're a ranger. Don't your powers come from within? And then the two have this really funny back and forth with Orion and Mark just watching from like the side where Lauren's like, no, I need a morpher. It's a key to activate it. And Valentina's like, oh, great. They have tools now. So it's just this back and forth between the two of them. They got a laugh out of me. That is for sure. But when Mark says, hey, if you need a morpher, I know where you can find one, and then he shows his key card that he was given in the flashback just earlier ago. So it looks like they're going to be using Mark's key card to sneak into the museum to get a morpher that they're looking for. Which does make me wonder because we did see the Eltarians having a power coin hidden within the museum, so it's of course plausible that they've got a morpher somewhere that Mark would be aware of. Now, it also does make me wonder, does the Eltarians have a collection of morphers they've gathered or have they created their own? Which would be plausible as well. I mean, they did create the VR Troopers power set, it looks like, with the Eltarian forces, so they were the people that created those powers within this universe, it seems like. So no doubt about it, they probably have their own morphers or they started creating their own prototype of morphers to harness Morphin Grid energy. Now, the next page took me by surprise as we see the original command center from MMPR, and in this universe, it's actually the Angel Grove Museum, and that took me by surprise, but it also doesn't surprise me that the Eltarians would have probably set up this original command center to probably be a museum, but also be some kind of possible base of operations that's probably underground downstairs, who knows, but it was cool to see this iconic building show up in this universe once again, because, you know, it's an iconic landmark in Power Rangers, you gotta have it, of course. So we then follow Bulk and Rita, and it looks like they're having a walk through the museum, and they stumble across a very familiar character from the Power Rangers universe, and that is RJ. RJ in this universe took me by surprise because as soon as we see him in this like wizard robe where he's wearing this blue and purple outfit. It's got a bunch of chains or like straps attached to it, and I lost my shit for a second. I thought, holy crap, this is Ivan Ooze. And then I read the speech bubble and he said, my name's RJ. And I was like, well, that's cool enough. I like RJ. I'm glad that RJ is in this universe. But instead of being a stoner pizza guy, I guess he's a stoner meditation guy who teaches people meditation. So he starts talking to Rita saying, oh, if you're here, you get a discount if you bring a friend. And then Rita just stares at him with this fiery look in her eyes. And then on the next page, she's burning everything down to the ground, which is kind of funny because she's just staring at RJ. And then on the next page, she's just burning it all down. And Rita's response is, the world is a cancer. And although this was meant to be a joke or not, this next line did get a chuckle out of me where Bulk says, I really hope you didn't kill anyone. And Rita's response is, trust me, I tried. So Rita's magic is still not working because of using fractured pieces of a morpher to put it together. So the wand is still a little bit finicky. And Rita then asks Bulk by saying, who's in charge of this world? Who's in charge here? And Bulk responds by saying, well, the Eltarians, they colonized Earth ages ago. And Rita's like, the Eltarians? And realizing that she's been freed from one prison to end up in another one, Rita comes to the conclusion that she's going to need to fix her wand and get more powerful magic to conquer this planet. So she drags Bulk along, but while she's having a villain monologue, Bulk is using his Pip-Boy from Fallout to contact the VR Troopers to give away their location where they are right now. And I like how he calls it a watch because, yeah, it does look like a Pip-Boy from Fallout. It's a really cool design that he's got on him. That tech is really neat. But Rita then asks Bulk saying, "Tell me, what do you know of the Power Rangers?" And we don't get a lot of that conversation. Unfortunately, it cuts off there. And then when we see them again, they're off doing their own thing. So I do wonder if Rita got an explanation or got an answer for that question. Because when we see Rita and Bulk again within the next couple of pages, we see that Rita is just able to use her magic to sort of turn off all the security alarms within the museum, and Bulk questions how she can do that, and Rita explains that it's the morphing grid energy that she has. And here we learn a little bit of this Rita's universe's backstory, where it's much similar to the Rita we've followed in the comics for a really long time, where we find out that this Rita was infused with morphing grid energy to put her on a path of good, much like the Rita we kind of know now. Ultimately, it didn't really work because, Rita ended up turning evil, but her being infused with morphing grid energy did provide some use. But Bulk tries to rebuttal her by saying the morphing grid is a myth, which I guess is whatever lies the Eltarians have been feeding him, or the morphing grid isn't really real in this universe, it's just something they've heard about. But I love Rita's response by saying, "Were you born a moron, or did the Eltarians instill it into you?" Which definitely got a chuckle out of me. But there's an interesting stuff you see within this page when you see Rita breaking into the museum, because you see this giant power egg, or it's not a power egg, it's like this egg-like shape that looks like she's cracked open, and beside it you see all these different crystals. Are these meant to represent Zeo crystals? Are they just meant to be normal crystals or power crystals? It's hard to say. But also you see a bunch of fossils on the wall in the background as well. So whether these are Easter eggs, nice little background things, you can definitely tell that the power egg or the egg in the background in the crystals are meant to represent the dino crystals that the Rangers got, or even the Zeo crystals they would have later down the line. So I really like that attention to detail. While this is all going on, we follow our main heroes who have snuck into the same museum with the help of Mark's card, which is a very dangerous thing that Mark is doing, because one of the things that's pointed out is that Mark's card could possibly be tracked, which is no doubt about it going to be a plot point moving forward within the next few issues, but also they can take his internship away because Mark is a refugee. So those actions are definitely putting him in danger while doing this. But there's also other things we learn about within this issue, some things that have been hinted at, like Valentina's father's meant to be really high up, which is why she seems to have a stick up her ass most of the time with how she acts. And Valentina, I feel like she's like probably the most unlikable character within this bunch. I mean, with how she acts and how she treats everyone, she comes off as such an asshole. Because you have this one scene where Lauren and Valentina are looking at these dinosaur fossils, and Valentina makes a comment by saying these are the original Titans of Earth, they had so much raw power, they could do basically whatever they want. And Lauren makes a comment by saying, yeah, they had raw power, but it depends on what you do with it. And Lauren then makes another passing comment at Valentina by saying, "It sounds like you want a lot of power." And Valentina says, "Yes, I want power like you, but my intentions aren't probably noble like how you want to use power." So that right away kind of establishes what kind of character she is, and I know she'll probably get some growth, I know she'll probably come around, but these first couple of issues introducing Valentina, it makes her pretty unlikable. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, arsehole characters are loved to be hated, or people just love arsehole characters in general. It's just Valentina, with how she's been acting around our main cast, and especially Lauren. She's very hostile towards Lauren, and I get that. She's a ranger, she's a fugitive, she probably can't trust her. But there's just some scenes where Melissa is writing her that makes her come off very unlikable with how she treats everyone else. And I guess Melissa's doing a good job if I'm not warming up to this character right away. So our heroes soon stumble across Rita Repulsa, and the scene where they first stumble across her, there's this really interesting panel that lines up with one of my predictions that I made a while ago with certain color palettes being around the Rangers. You've got a panel where John has a black background, Valentina has a yellow background, Lauren has a red one, Mark has a blue one, and Orion has a pink one. Kind of like something I predicted earlier within my previous video I did trying to predict all the colors for the Rangers. So I might be onto something after all. So Rita soon stumbles across our Rangers and she says, "It looks like we've got company," and Lauren right away knows what's up. She says, "You need to run because can you smell the stink of magic on her? And Rita notices that Lauren is the one that has Morphin Grid energy and gave her the ingredients for the wand. And right away, Lauren jumps into it and starts throwing hands with Rita right away. And it's a really cool fight scene. I mean, Rita is sort of ducking and weaving out of the way and using her magic to counter, but Lauren is able to get a kick to Rita's face. So it's a really cool fight scene. And I like how Lauren is just going hands-on with the combat, even without her powers. And it's something that Rita even points out during that fight, saying that Lauren doesn't have any powers, but she still fights like a ranger. And I really like that attention to detail. So while the fight is going on, the VR troopers soon rock up at the museum, and they're the ones going to be handling the mission. So they were told to leave the mission to them. So you've got the original 3 VR troopers, Caitlin, JB, and Ryan, of course. Caitlin gets name dropped in this issue, JB doesn't, but seeing how we get name drops for the other VR troopers, no doubt about it, it's them. And the page where we have the VR troopers outside the museum ready to go inside, it kind of establishes what kind of character Ryan is and how he's a government lapdog for the Eltarian forces, because you have this one scene where Caitlin says, "Hey, are you fine with doing this?" And Ryan says, "Look, our main priority is the Ranger." But Caitlin's like, "Hey, shouldn't you be worried about your best friend and your girlfriend?" And Ryan doesn't really give a response about that. He just kind of morphs with his helmet on and says, "John should know better that he's harvesting a fugitive, so this is on him for doing it. He should have known what he was doing." So it kind of shows that Ryan in this universe is like all action. He takes the job very seriously. So it makes me wonder where the VR troopers are going to be moving forward in this series, because a lot of people are predicting they're going to become the good guys. They might be the anti-heroes. I know we're getting that Power Rangers and VR Troopers one-shot on Free Comic Book Day, so I wonder if that's going to establish more lore within this universe or set up something else for later down the line. I'm not entirely sure. But that one page gives us a good glimpse into what Ryan is like in this universe, where he's following the government's orders, he's following the soldier orders. Like, he's a good soldier. That's the best way to sum it up. He's a good soldier that will follow orders and make sure the job is done and focus on the mission. So that kind of sets up what kind of character he is. So the battle between Rita and Lauren continues, and it gets pretty hectic. I mean, debris and smoke is getting kicked up all over the place. It gets so bad that Mark has to take his rebreather, his asthma puff, or whatever you want to call it, his inhaler that he uses to get some water because he's part Eltarian. So I guess all that smoke and debris is making things hard for him to breathe with all the air getting all dry. So while this is all going on, the fight takes another turn where tear gas or smoke bombs just start flooding the building, and it looks like that fight is getting interrupted as the guards are going to start swarming the building, and things aren't looking good for our heroes. And Rita then says to Lauren by saying, "It looks like we're both trapped. I have a proposition. Your powers, my magic, a team up, if you will." And Lauren says, "Are you offering me a deal?" And Rita's reply, I love her reply here where she says, "My dear, I'm offering you a team, but it starts with you, Thoughts." And Lauren's like, "Do it." So Rita begins chanting her magic spell by saying, "A Power Ranger you once were, to become stronger than you once were before. And with my magic and elements combined, welcome now, Ranger Prime." So yeah, that was Power Rangers Prime issue 3. Once again, another solid issue by Melissa and the team. And it looks like things will definitely start picking up even more when issue 4 drops next month in February, so definitely stay tuned for that. But what are your thoughts on Power Rangers Prime issue 3? What are your predictions moving forward? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And with that said, I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace out, take care, and bye. Hey there guys, Ash here, and we are back with another issue of Power Rangers Prime. Power Rangers Prime issue number 4, and the wait is finally over as everyone has been requesting. Everyone is wondering, when are we going to see Power Rangers in this Power Rangers comic? And it's finally here because issue 3's big cliffhanger was Lauren finally morphing into Red Ranger Prime, and the big cliffhanger for this month's issue is the entire team finally forming, something that's been teased for the longest time. Well, not for the longest time, ever since back in December of last year was when we got the reveal of the full team, and now we finally have the team coming together. And there's a lot to talk about, there's a lot to break down with issue number 4, so let's get into it right away. So the issue opens up with a flashback from 10 years ago, and you have Jun and Janessa visiting the planet Eltar, as Janessa wants Jun to visit his home planet and meet his people. And right away we're introduced to one of the commanders on planet Eltar, and that is Commander Yorlam. It's not Zardos, unfortunately. I thought it was Zardos when I saw the preview pages, but it's not. It's some other dude. And right away, Jun's being scolded because he's an Eltarian with hair. He's still doing that half Earth, half Eltarian custom, and Yorlam wants Jun to shave his hair because he has to acknowledge the Eltarian traditional roots and remember where he came from. And this is an interesting setup for Jun because although he's Eltarian, he was raised on Earth, so his allegiance to Earth is more with Earth than Eltar, it seems like, and that's what the flashback seems like it's setting up, because you can have Jun having that sort of like, you could say Goku mentality in a way, a Saiyan raised on Earth, but this is an Eltar raised on Earth, so he'd want to protect Earth more than his own home planet because, you know, he's lived here the longest, he's got friends here, he's got family here, so he'd want to protect them. So this is most likely setting up Jun rebelling against his Eltarian roots and his Eltarian heritage to protect the people on Earth and to protect his friends on Earth. So meanwhile, back in the present, Lauren has transformed into a brand new Ranger Prime form, and Rita reveals some interesting facts about the suit, or the suits, because this is going to be playing a major key factor when the others get their powers as well. So Rita infused Jasper, the rock Jasper, for strength, so that way the suit can be a lot more sturdier and a lot more stronger than her previous one. And Lauren is confused that this isn't her suit, you know, her samurai suit. And Rita tells her that she must grow beyond her mere firepower if she's to serve her. And that's one thing that Rita also brings up a lot in this issue, is that you'll serve me, I want you to serve me, you'll be by my side when you serve me. And that's a lot of things that Rita talks about in this issue. And I know a lot of people are predicting that Rita is going to be sort of like the mentor in this story. I don't think Rita is cut out for a mentor role, but this is sort of like a reverse Zordon situation where Zordon was this wise wizard that wanted the Rangers to get the powers so they can protect people. Rita has given these teenagers with attitude Ranger powers for her own needs, for her own plan that's probably going to unfold later down the line. So, Lauren having a different suit, and she even brings it up. That's one thing that confuses me because, you know, with Power Rangers Prime, we got all those different variants and all these different covers of Lauren in this brand new samurai form that looked amazing. It looked fantastic. I loved all the different artist transitions of those different suits or those different art styles that Lauren had for her brand new samurai power-up form, and we never saw it. So I do wonder if Melissa actually has anything planned with that suit, because, you know, it was commissioned, it was drawn by a lot of artists for Boom Studio covers here and there, and we never saw it. So either was that suit a fake out, or will we see it later down the line? Who knows, but either way, I like Power Rangers Prime suits. I think the Prime suits are pretty cool looking, and I'll definitely give my thoughts on them. Well, I've given my thoughts on them in several other videos, but let's keep talking about this issue. So not wanting her friends to get caught in the crossfire, Lauren makes an escape for the others and decides to stay behind with Rita to fight off the rest of the Eltarian forces, not knowing the extent of their army they're bringing in here to deal with just one Ranger and one Space Witch, because they bring the whole freaking platoon here almost, it seems like. So, Captain Cannell shows up. Captain Cannell was in issue 2, one of the Eltarian soldiers that first discovered Rita all the way back then. So, bit of a grudge match here, you could say, between these characters. And she tells Rita to stand down with her Ranger by saying, you don't want this. You don't want the storm that's about to come. And Rita has this big shit-eating grin on her face. She laughs. It's a really awesome page that Michael drew here with Rita having that sort of like biting her bottom lip smirk or that biting her bottom lip laugh and that shit-eating grin she's got on her face. It's freaking amazing. And Rita replies by saying, I do want this. And she uses her magic to bring one of the T-Rex fossil displays to life. And I feel like there's some really good symbolism you've got going on here because Lauren has got the power of the T-Rex. Rita brings her T-Rex to life to aid them in battle. I feel like if that's what they were going for, that's some really great symbolism they've got for that page here. So Lauren, with her brand new powers, she leaps into action and she starts kicking ass right away. And the fight scenes that Michael does here on these pages are really freaking fantastic. Like, a really amazing job that Michael did with these action scenes. Now, while this is all going on, the others are making their escape, and Orion speaks up and he pipes up by saying, hey, we just can't leave Lauren there. She needs to know that she's not alone in this fight, because when everyone else was first escaping, Orion was going to stay back because he didn't trust the vibes that Rita was giving, and that's totally understandable. But everyone else speaks up, and you kind of see the perspectives on why they're wanting to escape. You've got Mark by saying, I don't know what else we can do. So Mark's one of those guys that is unsure what he could do to help people. You've got Valentina worried about getting jailed and stuck into a camp. And John is just saying, look, we just got to get out of here. And Orion makes a really good point by saying, look, we're in this together now, and tells Mark that Mark could have just left her in the dumpster, but he didn't, and John and Valentina could have ratted them out ages ago, but they didn't. So Orion is showing that, like, hey, look, we're in too deep now, we've got to help her out because she's our friend. And while this is all going on, you've got Bulk who comes around the corner, and Bulk in this universe is kind of showing like the Bulk we all know and love, where he's kind of being a little bit cowardly, where he's like, look, there's a battle between a space witch, a ranger, and a bunch of angry Eltarians, and I don't want to be standing amongst whoever's going to win this fight, because whoever wins this fight is probably not going to be a good outcome, and I don't want to be caught in the middle of it. So Bulk being Bulk, he's just kind of keeping his distance and doing what is best for him, which is kind of funny in a way. And a lot of people have been gunning for Bulk to be the sixth ranger in this series, and it looks like Melissa has big plans for him, especially with what's set up with him in this issue, where he's sort of reaching the best potential he can possibly reach by helping people out. So who knows what Melissa has planned with Bulk in this universe. After that, we then cut back to Lauren and Rita trying to fight off the Eltarian forces, and they're soon hit by a giant blast that's enough to destroy the T-Rex fossil display and keep Rita down and out for a little bit for the next couple of pages. So it's a pretty powerful blast that they get caught by. And Lauren's surprised. She thought this was one of the Eltarian weapons used by Cannell, and Cannell's like, oh, that's not my weapon, it's their weapon. And suddenly you have the VR troopers on the scene ready to fuck shit up. And here we get an interesting dynamic between the VR troopers and the Eltarian forces with how they're treated right now, because, you know, like I said, they're soldiers just doing their job. And Lauren immediately runs in, and she's barely able to hold her own against the Eltarian forces, and they just run in there. Ryan just runs in there and knees Lauren right in the face, shattering her helmet, and it's pretty freaking brutal. I mean, Lauren is even on the ground, and Ryan has her by the neck as he's trying to choke her out and subdue her to make sure, like, she's down and out for the count. Like, it's a pretty brutal, like, force that they're using to subdue these rangers, because, you know, rangers in this universe are built up to be this dangerous threat, so the VR troopers are using whatever force they can to stop her. And things are looking bad for Lauren as the VR troopers slowly close in on her, and you have this one scene where Cannell says to Ryan by saying, look, this is taking too long, let's just get in there together and take him out. And Ryan's like, no, clear the room and leave this to us. You heard me, Guardian, fall back. And Cannell does not like this. She's like, are you trying to give me orders? I think I outrank you. And Ryan says, this ranger is dangerous, we need space to work. So that's Ryan's mindset with how he's going to handle this situation. And Cannell says, look, you only get to order me once, human, but Eltarians have long memories. So that is definitely going to be setting up some conflict between Cannell and the BR Troopers, or mostly Ryan, in the nearby future. So this one interaction that we had between these two characters in this issue is definitely going to play a role moving forward in the next couple of issues, or even within the next story arc, because that's quite an interesting interaction that we had between them. How Ryan's like, look, let me just handle this, you can just fuck off. But Cannell's like, look, let's just stand down, the VR Troopers can handle this if they can. So Bulk runs over to Rita and is like, hey, I think you're losing right now. And he does say that she needs to stop this, but Rita's like, look, you're an idiot, but my resources are depleted and we've only got one ranger. How are you going to get out of this? And Bulk's like, if you had more resources. And he opens his hand up. Well, he takes up this bag and opens up his hand, and you've got a bunch of stones being presented to Rita. And with everyone else watching the battle going on, they want to help out, they want to do something. And Rita's like, if you want to help her, I can help you. And she begins chanting another magic spell to infuse them with brand new power coins. And as she begins like the big speech by saying, look, you can become powerful rangers, the choice is yours, I won't force it upon you, take out and reach it. And during her big speech, she gets blasted. So one of the VR troopers blasted Rita during her monologue, and I gotta say that's kind of funny because, you know, she's making this big monologue and someone blasted her, which is kind of funny because, you know, that no one in Power Rangers gets blasted enough during a transformation or gets blasted during a monologue, and someone in this comic did it right here. So everyone reaches out for the power coins, and Valentina is reaching out for hers, and Ryan tries to stop her. But one of the people who wants to become a ranger is Jun, because Jun says, do you know how many times I've had decisions made for me? My entire life I've been told I have to be a hero, I have to be a guardian, an example. And this is Jun moving away, like I said at the start of the issue, forging his own path that isn't ingraded by his Eltarian roots. He's making his own path. He's being a hero on his own terms. And I gotta say, that's really freaking cool. So Ryan tries to stop Valentina from grabbing the power coin, but it's too late. And then suddenly they reach out, they grab their power coins. There's a massive explosion. And then from the blast, you see the appearance of the Prime Rangers who have finally come together, all 5 Rangers. So that's where the issue ends, where you have the Prime Rangers about to face off against the VR Troopers, and that's where the issue ends. So Power Rangers Prime issue 4 was a fantastic issue. Once again, another solid issue done by Melissa and done by Michael. Really freaking great. I can't wait to see where this comic is going to go moving forward with the solicitations that have been released so far. So I'm really curious about that because, you know, we've got issue 5 coming out, and then we've got issue 6, and then the VR Troopers one-shot, of course. So there's a lot of Power Rangers Prime content in the nearby future, but probably a bunch of other stuff we'll see later down the line. So this was a solid issue, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next. What are your thoughts on it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And with that said, I will catch you guys next time. Peace out, take care, and bye. Power Rangers Prime issue 5 was incredible. If you're a fan of action, emotion, lore being weaved into the story, you're going to love this issue. You are definitely going to love this issue because this is setting up so much with the Prime universe because it's setting up our characters, it's setting up the lore around us, but not only that, there's still mystery around to this Power Rangers Prime universe because there's little Easter eggs and cameos in this that just raises further questions when you see them. So let's jump right into it. Let's not do the introductions. You know who I am. You know what you're here for. Let's jump into Power Rangers Prime issue 5. So the issue opens up with a flashback 4 years ago in the past, and we see the origins on how Mark and Orion became best friends. So the two of them are working this waiting job for this fancy party that the Eltarians and the rich people are throwing. And during this party, you have these two guys that walk up to Mark and Orion, and they start harassing them. And one of the things that one of these people note is that Orion's home planet Andresia was decimated and there were 0 survivors. Well, except for Orion, he's the only one. And you get to see the racism and the prejudice that you see within the Prime universe within this series, because one of them makes a comment by saying that Orion deserves to be put in a museum because he's the only one left. He shouldn't be wearing a suit, it's a waste on him. And then they make these offhand comments that Mark should be a pet because he's an equation. So you get to see the prejudice and the racism within the Power Rangers Prime universe towards the refugees who come to Earth. And that's not the first time we'll see this within this issue, because there's another offhand comment that we get within this issue as well. And we'll get to that when we get to that. So a fight almost breaks out between the two groups, but they're soon saved by Valentina, who comes in and splashes the drinks on one of the people's faces to sort of de-escalate the situation without making it worse. So the two of them get their asses saved back there. So after this situation, Orion and Mark soon become best friends, and this sort of sets up where we are now between the two characters and how they met. So once again, this flashback is setting up some big things for this issue, but not only that, it's sowing some seeds for later stuff we'll see later down the line in Power Rangers Prime. So definitely pay attention to this flashback, because I feel like it's setting up for something really important later down the line. But not only that, it's also the origin stories on how Mark and Orion first met, and we see their friendship forming for the very first time. So after that flashback, we then cut to the present day, where issue 4 last left off on, where John, Valentina, Orion, and Mark had gotten their Ranger powers, and their reactions to getting their powers for the very first time is probably not the reaction you were probably expecting. It's a lot of confusion, anger, and what the hell is going on here? So even the VR troopers are confused, with JB and Caitlin aren't sure what exactly is going on. JB under the impression that they can multiply now, and Caitlin makes a comment by saying different colors, are they warriors or are they crowns? And I really do like that remark. So after this, we then have Lauren getting really cocky, thinking now there's 5 Rangers here that they can take on these VR troopers. But Ryan's like, look, I know your life hasn't been easy. I know you've been on the run for a really long time. But do you want to subject these people to the same fate? Turn yourself in. So while Ryan's trying to talk down Lauren, Orion is materializing his own weapon, which is this giant mace that he forms, and he just walks up to Ryan and just swings it at him and knocks him back. And the whole reason why he did this is because, 1, he can't control his powers, so it just materialized in his hands, and 2, he wanted Ryan to stop talking, so he decided to hit him with the hammer or the mace, and he hit him too hard, which is kind of funny. So once again, you've got these brand new Rangers who are inexperienced and trying to learn how to control their powers, but also trying to get a grasp of everything that's going on. So with Ryan knocked back, Valentina runs over to him, but under the assumption that she's going for the attack, Caitlin opens fire and blasts her. And then John tries to figure out what's going on, like, why'd you shoot at her? And Ryan, like I said, he's trying to de-escalate the situation. He's like, look, I need you to help me. I'm trying to control this situation. And John then materializes his weapon, which is this giant bow staff that's got like a snake head at the end of it, and it's got like a ball in its mouth. It looks really freaking cool. Like, I can't wait to find the actual themes of these Rangers and what their motif is all about. Like, I've theorized, I've speculated with what they might be, but I can't wait to get the official confirmation. But we get John materializing his weapon, and soon after that, a big fight escalates between the two different teams, and we get this awesome double page spread, and it looks really freaking amazing. So the giant battle breaks out between the VR troopers and the Prime Rangers, and you have this one scene where John is just swinging his weapon around. He's trying to get a good hit on Ryan, and just the area around him is getting destroyed because he's not able to land a single hit on him. And Ryan says, look, are you serious, John? You don't have to do this. This isn't your fight. And John questions him by saying, is this how it's going to end? You're going to take us all in? And Ryan replies by saying, it's my job. I have to do this. And John says, since when? weren't you fighting mutants a couple of days ago? What do they have on you? What dirt do they have on you? And we don't really get an answer to that question. So while that fight's going on, you then cut to Lauren and Caitlin getting into a fight, and Lauren gets her shit kicked in. Like, she gets her shit rocked by Caitlin. You have this one scene where Caitlin does this sort of like shadow clone, or she moves really fast where there's two of her, and Lauren gets kicked right for a wall. And Valentina tries to de-escalate the situation and tells Caitlin to stop, and she just nearly gets punched right in the face. But once again, Ryan is trying to de-escalate the situation by saying, we can do this another way. They aren't mutants. But the other VR troopers reply by saying, yeah, but they're rangers and we have our orders, which is another callback. Like Ryan said like a couple of issues ago, like, we have to do this. This is orders. We have to do the mission. And again, hearing the mutants get brought up again in this issue shows that this is when like mutants in this Power Rangers universe are being hunted, and I do wonder if that's going to lead into the Ransack of this universe, or we'll get the origins of Ransack in the Prime universe and mutants are being hunted down within this universe. So I do wonder if we're going to get a follow-up on that, because hearing that mutants are being hunted down in the Prime universe is an interesting bit of information that we learn. And while this is all going down, you've got Orion and you've got Mark getting cornered by the Caitlin Shadow clones, and while they're getting cornered, the giant T-Rex that Rita brought to life comes to life once again and starts roaring. So you've got the giant T-Rex on the loose once again, and it's just causing havoc. So while this is all going on, you have Lauren waking up after she got knocked out, and Rita says some really interesting stuff to her by saying, it looks like we both have some learning to do. I thought my morph would recreate the skill, but apparently not. And I like this callback, because usually when Rangers get the ability of being Rangers, they get all that fighting knowledge sort of built into their mind. Like, they know how to fight, like they know how to do all the legwork, like it's natural. But it looks like that isn't the case here. So while this is all going on, you've got the T-Rex going crazy, they're trying to dodge, duck, and weave out of the way, but you still have Lauren and Rita having their talk, where Lauren wants to go help them, but Rita says, look, given how helpful you were before, I doubt you can do much. I've created a distraction, let's let it do its work, and in the meantime, we're going to have a little chat, because there are two groups fighting out there, but only one team. And I like that observation that she makes. Like, there's two groups fighting out there, but only one of them is working as a team. She then makes a comment about all the other Rangers who are fighting right now, where Mark is paralyzed with fear and he's scrambling around. The Pink Ranger is enthusiastic, but he lacks any real skill. He swings his weapon like he's mining in a cave, and I do like that callback, because I believe Orion did work in the mines in the original universe in the Power Rangers TV show. She says that Jun is talented, but all that anger and emotion he's channeling, it's not letting him strategize when he fights. And the Yellow Ranger, well, the Yellow Ranger's too busy being torn between two different directions and has no idea where she stands on this situation. So yeah, Rita practically points it out by saying, look, your team is a mess, they're not working together, they have no coordination, they have no idea what they're doing, and if they keep fighting like this, they're probably going to get killed or even captured. So on the next panel, you have Rita and Lauren standing in this room, and this room is something to take notice of, because they are standing in a room full of all these different Ranger weapons and morphers. One of the notable things you see on the wall behind them is the Dragon Dagger, but not only that, you also see the Lost Galaxy Morpher, and I believe I saw the textless version online, and I think behind one of the speech bubbles is, I believe, a Samurai Morpher, or it's one of the phone morphers that we've seen before, but you have all these different Ranger weapons and relics behind them on the wall, and that raises more questions. How did these end up in this museum? But Rita brings up a really good point by saying, look, you're standing in a room of relics, Lauren, something that your team will soon also become very quickly if you don't take action. And the solution right now is not to fight, and you probably know what you must do right now. And Lauren with the shattered visor looking really freaking badass. Like, the artwork here is freaking amazing. And she says, I need to survive right now. And on the next page, you see her jumping into action, grabbing Rita's wand, blowing up the T-Rex statue, or the T-Rex display coming back to life, explodes, and the VR troopers are caught in the explosion. And you have Ryan looking pissed off with his helmet all shattered. And that's really freaking cool, because I haven't seen Matilda, what VR Troopers is based on, or one of the things that VR Troopers used footage on. But I don't know if they ever did the helmet shatter that you would see in Sentai and Kamen Rider later down the line. But seeing it here, it looks really freaking badass, especially the expression that Ryan is giving off right now, because the glare on the eyes on the VR Trooper's suit and the expression on his face, like, he is looking pissed off, and I freaking love that. So the team managed to escape and make their way through the tunnels underground, trying to get out of this place before it's too late. And while this is all going on, Valentina starts crying and having a bit of a breakdown and starts blaming Lauren on why they're here and why everything went so bad. And Rita puts her in her place here, and I freaking love Rita in the Prime Universe. Like, she is just owning everyone here. Like, I know I was iffy about Rita being the possible mentor for the team, but if she's going to be written like this moving forward, then I freaking love her. Like, Rita in the Prime Universe is freaking badass. I love her. She's amazing. So, Valentina tries to blame this whole situation on almost everyone but herself here by saying this is Lauren's fault, this is Rita's fault, and Rita's like, look, you're the one who reached out and grabbed the power coin like everyone else. And Valentina tries to rebuttal by saying, my friend was in danger, I didn't really have a choice. And Rita says, look, that's why you're a ranger. Deep down in that scared yellow heart is a champion. And Valentina's like, look, I had a normal life before any of this stuff happened. And Rita's like, well, that was an illusion. And this ranger stuff, I was the best thing that ever happened to you. And within that moment, Valentina starts throwing hands with Rita, and Rita just immediately sidesteps her and puts her on her ass by saying, look, you have proven that you're not worthy, and drops her on her ass, like I mentioned earlier, like side smacks her with the staff. It's freaking amazing. So Valentina's like, look, John, we're leaving, or I'm going to tell your mother about everything. And John's like, look, we can't just abandon this ranger stuff. And Valentina's like, look, abandon what? What are you even doing this for? And John's like, our world. And she's like, you're Eltarian. So once again, John is fighting for this world. He's not fighting for Eltar, he's fighting for this world. So we kind of understand where he lies right now. So Valentina, again, still a bit of a bitch by saying, look, John, this isn't a game and you need to trust me. We need to go now. We still have time to fix this. And Rita, once again, with the sass, says to frickin' John by saying, run along, Eltarian, before you grow that spine you've been lacking. That is a badass line. I freaking love that line. That line is cold as fuck and I love it. So John and Valentina walk away, and Lauren's like, look, you're just going to let them leave? And Rita replies with this next line by saying, this part, again, we have no idea if this is like the old MMPR Rita from the previous continuity, or is this like a brand new Rita that we don't know about her past? But she says this by saying, I'm not interested in making mindless pawns, not anymore. So that not anymore line raises a lot of suspicions, like what the hell is this Rita about, like making mindless pawns? What is the history of this Rita? What the hell is going on? Like, I have no idea. Like, that raises some red flags, like this might be the old Rita, but then again, we don't know the backstory of this Rita. But that raises a lot of questions because, like I said, she knew about all the Ranger stuff when they were in that room earlier. Then she makes this comment, like, what is Melissa cooking here? I have no idea. But it is raising so many eyebrows, so many questions. I can't wait to see where this is going to go next. So Valentina and John run away, and Orion's like by saying, he's gone, I can't find him. And once again, Rita with the sass by saying, are you thick? We just saw them all leave, where she's referring to John and Valentina. And Orion's like, not John, Mark is missing. And then on the final page, you see a police car driving away, and you have Ryan sitting in the car by saying, I need to warn you, I don't have a lot of patience right now. This has been a bad day for the both of us, and I'm sorry about what's about to happen, but I need answers, and you're going to give them to me. And then on the final panel, you have Mark in the back of the cop car, handcuffed, gagged, with a look of fear on his eye as he's being driven away, about to be interrogated by the VR troopers and possibly the Eltarian forces. And that is where issue 5 ends on that crazy note. So, with that said, I'm going to bring this review of Power Rangers Prime issue 5 to a close, this review, this recap, whatever you want to call it. But what did you guys think of this issue? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And with that said, I will catch you guys later. Peace out, take care, and bye. So last month in Power Rangers Prime, it ended on a cliffhanger where the Rangers finally got their powers to morph and they went face to face with the VR troopers, but they were no match for them and they were forced to retreat. Unfortunately, Mark was left behind and he wasn't able to escape, and he ended up getting captured by the VR troopers, and now he's being interrogated by Ryan Steele as they're trying to interrogate him and get more answers about the Power Rangers. But the whole premise of this issue is that it doesn't really focus on the interrogation side of things with Mark and Ryan, is that it more dives into the past of Mark and we learn more about his backstory and what happened to Aquitar on that fateful day. Now with this issue, it does jump between the present day and the past with Mark growing up, but the timeline is really mumbled and jumbled with what it's setting up in this issue. So what I'm going to do with this review, with this recap, with this discussion of Power Rangers Prime issue 6 is I'm going to follow the flashback in chronological order with what years it took place in, and then I'm going to back around with the interrogation. But I want to focus on the interrogation first because you have Mark being interrogated by Ryan Steele, where Ryan Steele wants to get more information about the Power Rangers. And the thing is with the VR troopers within this Power Rangers universe is that it's been a very mixed bag with some fans with how the VR troopers have been acting in this issues, because not a lot of people like seeing the VR troopers as sort of the bad guys in this series, but like I've said before, they are just soldiers following orders, but they're still the characters you all know and love. They're just sort of under a different way of how they do things. But this does sort of pull from the VR Troopers TV show with stuff like that, because you have this one scene where Ryan is trying to be the good cop with Mark, and he says that, hey, your mum was an astronaut, my dad was a scientist, you've got a dog, I've got a dog, my dog is named Jet. Now, learning those lines by saying that, oh, Ryan's dad was a scientist and he's got a dog named Jet. This is still following the same sort of premise of Ryan from the VR Troopers TV show, but next month and leading into June, we are getting the VR Troopers spin-off within the Power Rangers Prime universe. And I feel like that's one thing that a lot of people have been curious to see with how is this going to all tie together with the Power Rangers Prime universe with the VR Troopers. So that is the one thing that a lot of people have been holding out for. But like I said, this issue is Mark getting interrogated by Ryan, but we're also sort of diving into Mark's past and learning what exactly happened on that fateful day. And with how this flashback is played out and how it ends, it is definitely a huge character growth moment for Mark, as it kind of understands why the character is the way he is and why he acts the way he does in some certain situations, especially with how he has been acting since the series began. But let's dive into that flashback as it opens up 27 years ago in the depths of space. So the very first flashback we see in chronological order takes place 27 years ago, where we see Mark's mother, who's an astronaut as mentioned before, floating through space, and it almost looks like it's the end for her. Now this does raise a lot of questions, like she was an astronaut, what was her mission in space, what was she doing in space, what was her objective in space, but as she's floating through the depths of space and it almost looks like it's the end for her, she's soon picked up by a spaceship. So after that we then get a bit of a time time jump where it jumps forward to 16 years ago on the planet Aquitar, where we see a very, very young Mark who is basically a toddler, and you see them in the waters of Aquitar amongst the wildlife, and you have one of these sea creatures brush up against him, and it upsets him a fair bit. And this kind of sets up with what Mark's mother is sort of narrating, how Mark is afraid, and she tells him that it's not, she basically says, look, it's okay to be afraid, but you're stronger than all of this, and you can overcome it. But this definitely sets up the show that Mark, even since he was very young, he was a very scared child, very easily startled child, and scared of the world around him. So it's definitely setting up what's going to happen to Mark at the end of this issue, setting up his big character growth moment as the story goes on. Now, after that, you then get another bit of a time skip in Mark's past, where it's now 14 years ago, and it's Aquitar at the capital city of Analis, 14 years ago. But Mark is basically a little bit older now. He's using an inhaler that we've seen him use before, but this is more of a traditional Ventanyl or traditional inhaler that you've seen before, where you push down on it. And a lot of the other Aquitians make fun of him for using it by saying he's weak. And Mark doesn't like that he has to use an inhaler because, he's getting made fun of, they steal it from him, and his mother says, look, you don't need it most of the time. You need it only when you get a little bit anxious. So this shows that whenever Mark has, anxiety attacks, he gets nervous, he gets scared, that's when his breathing plays up and he needs to rely on the inhaler. So whenever he gets scared, whenever he gets frightened, that's when he relies on this inhaler. But Mark doesn't like it because it makes him look stupid. But his mother reassures him by saying, on Earth. But Mark says, look, we're not on Earth, we're here. And she's like, right, you're here, but one day I'll take you to Earth when it's free. Because the Eltarians say, look, Eltarians offer protection but not freedom, and Aquitar is determined to be free for now, which is kind of alluding to what happens later on in the issue. So those are some interesting things that you kind of learn within this sort of section of the flashback. One, Mark's mother is still kind of a mystery, and we'll definitely touch up upon her later. But hearing that Eltarian says, look, there's only certain planets that can come to Earth depending on how we judge you, but if your planet is free, you're a planet with lots of freedom, then we don't need you on this planet. We'll only take refugees and people who are sort of scraggling along and stuff like that. So that's an interesting perspective that they kind of have with everything going on with how they've sort of colonized Earth. Like they're only picking and choosing which planets they're going to be taking to Earth. The others, well, screw them, they got left behind. So that's an interesting perspective. But like I said, Mark's mother is still quite the mystery because we know nothing about her at this point. We know she was an astronaut, but we kind of don't know what led her up to going into space. So I really hope we get answers to that later down the line with what she was doing in space, and or even how she settled down on Aquitar after she came to the planet, because you, like I said, you have the flashback that takes 27 years at the beginning when we first see her floating in space, and then you have the flashback when she's sort of showing Mark the water life of Aquitar, which takes place a little bit like 10 years later. So makes you wonder what happened within that time skip, and who did she meet to sort of give birth to Mark? Like, who's the father in this situation, or who's the other parent in this situation if she chose to settle down? Is it a familiar legacy character we know within the Power Rangers universe, or is it someone completely different? That is a big question. So suddenly out of nowhere, the Beast Brigade soon invade Aquitar. So the Beast Brigade have been sort of built up to be this very big threat within the Power Rangers Prime universe history, where we don't know a lot about them, but we know that they invaded Earth all those years ago, and then Eltar defeated them, and that's what led to them colonizing Earth. But it looks like the Beast Brigade also attacked Aquitar all those years ago. So I do hope we understand a little bit more about the Beast Brigade and sort of what their motives are, what they're about, because they just seem like this alien force that moves from planet to planet, sort of invading it and blowing the planets up, leaving a trail of destruction. Now, amongst all the chaos with everything going on, Mark and his mother try to escape everything happening, and Mark loses his little inhaler and he tries to pick it up, he tries to grab it while trying to escape as well, and his mother and this other Aquitian jump on this little jet ski raft to get away, but Mark tries reaching out to his mother, or she tries reaching out to him, but he's too scared to move and grab her hand to get on the raft. And this leads up to the raft being destroyed, and I assume that Mark's mother was killed within the explosion. Now, my rule set is that they're not dead until you see the body itself, but seeing how big that explosion was, I'm guessing no one could have survived that. But after everything going on, Mark takes hiding in a little case where he's almost discovered by one of the Beast Brigade monsters, but he's soon saved by an Eltarian soldier who comes to his rescue. But you see Mark inside this little cooler, this little chest that's full of water, and Mark is just like curled up, like sitting like hunched over. He's sort of like curled up into a little ball. He's sort of sucking on his inhaler. That shows how scared he is within this situation. So we've got 6-year-old Mark here. He's being called forward by all the Eltarians by saying refugee 082893 to step forward. So if you don't know what that number is, 082893, that is the original air date for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from 30 plus years ago. But Mark is basically terrified. He's not speaking up. One of the other races that's a part of Kruger's race tried speaking up for him, but the Eltarians say, look, he can speak for himself if he wants to. But Mark is barely able to say a word. But the other Eltarians do examine his skills by noticing that he's Sequitian, but they do say that, look, maybe he prefers to be silent this way. But then looking at his stats, they find out that he's 6 years old, half human, half Sequitian, and that his mother is dead from the Beast Brigade attack. Now, I want to say allegedly dead, because like I said, nothing's confirmed until we see the body, but seeing how big that explosion is, we're not entirely sure who survived. But that is pretty much the flashback that led to Mark coming to Earth all those years ago, and we got a sort of bit of an insight on his past. And I'm sure that this is not the last Mark flashback we'll get as Power Rangers Prime moves on, because I get the feeling that Melissa will probably be opening more issues with different flashbacks that tie into Mark's past, and it's going to sort of tie things together moving forward, because this was sort of like his childhood with how he was raised on Aquitar and how he is the way he is, why he's so cowardly and stuff like that. What happened to his mother all those years ago, where he had that big traumatic experience from his past, and now we actually finally get an answer. But I feel like there's more questions to be asked with everything that was shown within this flashback. After that whole flashback, we then jump back to the present day where Ryan is still playing good cop, but you can see that he's sort of slowly breaking, and he's trying to get the answers from Mark, because the reason why he wants the answers is because he's trying to save someone he loves, that being Valentina, by saying, look, there's someone I love and I'm genuinely scared for them, and I don't know what's going to happen to her or you. And Mark says, look, you're afraid? I've been afraid my whole life. Too afraid to stand up for myself, too afraid to even tell the Eltarian patrollers where to find my mother's body, but now I've found the strength, and I can't let you take that from me. And within that moment, he summons his power coin into his hand, and he begins to morph by saying, I'm a Power Ranger Prime Blue. And the scene where he morphs is freaking fantastic, because within this whole interrogation scene, it takes place in sort of like this large space, this interrogation room, but there's been this pipe that's been leaking down on Mark's head. And what they do when he morphs, because he's the Blue Ranger, is you get this awesome sort of splash of the water when he transforms, and the helmet wraps around him. But Mark immediately transforms into his Prime Blue form. Ryan transforms as well. He morphs as well into his VR Trooper form. And immediately, freaking Mark begins to smack down on Ryan and starts clobbering him. He gets the upper hand in this fight. And Ryan's trying to say, look, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And Mark isn't having any of it. He's just clobbering the hell out of Ryan. Like he freaking does a shuriken on him and knocks him up into the air. It's freaking amazing. And it almost looks like he's going to win the fight here. He could have probably escaped in this time. But when it looks like he's got the upper hand in this fight, he's soon surprised attacked by JB, and he's quickly knocked out. And JB's like, look, Ryan, are you okay? And Ryan's like, yeah, he caught me by surprise, but I gotta hand it to him. The kid's a fighter. He's gonna need it for what's coming. And that's pretty much where the issue ends, where Mark is passed out on the floor, and they're sort of teasing more things to come within this sort of interrogation story arc that we're doing right now with Mark being in prison. But that was Power Rangers Prime issue 6. Once again, another solid issue. This issue was a great character moment for Mark, where he's been the scared character ever since the series began, and with his newfound powers he's able to find bravery and stand up for himself. So once again, Melissa is cooking with this issue along with the entire team involved with Power Rangers Prime. Now, usually this is where I say at the end of the video, I will see you guys next month for the next issue of Power Rangers Prime with issue 7, but Power Rangers Prime will not be getting released next month in May. We'll be taking a bit of a break, but next week we are getting the VR Troopers Free Comic Book Day one-shot, and if I'm able to get my hands on that, which I probably will be able to get my hands on that, I will definitely be having a review for that up on the channel for you guys to check out. So with that said, I will bring this review of Power Rangers Prime issue 6 to a close, and I will see you guys later. Peace out, take care, and bye. Alright, so Power Rangers Prime issue 7. This issue, I feel like it's going to be a mixed bag amongst some people within the fandom, because, you know, some people want their Power Ranger comics to be fighto and not talking, but if you pay close attention to this issue, it is introducing and setting up a lot of things around the world of Power Rangers Prime. We're introduced to our first Zord that is man-made, we see mutants and how they're treated and their sort of underground society, and we learn that some mutants come from the virtual reality world that is definitely going to be playing a role within the VR Troopers comic book coming out at the end of this month, because that line, if you miss it, you'll miss it, but if you pay attention, then you'll definitely catch on to what that mutant was talking about. Not only that, the end panel, the big twist at the end of this panel, is definitely setting up for something big with a character that I had no idea that would have an involvement in Power Rangers Prime, but Rita is on a mission to find this certain character who is in a tube. And I'll just leave it at that. So, without any further ado, let's get into Power Rangers Prime issue 7, and big special shout out to Boom Studios for sending me an early review copy for this issue. Okay, so it's been a while since we last had a Power Rangers Prime comic, but if you don't remember, at the end of issue 5, you kind of had the team split up and decide to do their own separate things. Valentina and Jun decided to walk away from the team for now as they decide to solve this their own way. Meanwhile, you've got Lauren, Bulk, Rita, and Orion down in the sewers trying to find a way out. Well, while that party is down in the sewers, they are attacked by mutants. And the reason why there are mutants underground within the Power Rangers Prime universe is because Earth is an Eltarian colony. So if you're not a registered citizen or you don't play by the rules, well, you slip through the cracks and you essentially get taken off the grid, you can say, in a way. So that's why there are mutants underground within the Power Rangers Prime universe, where it's people who probably didn't get their citizenship, they became outlaws, or they were sort of committed some kind of crime, or probably accused of some kind of crime, and they just basically went underground, which is something we see later on within the issue. So while they're trying to fight off all these mutants, you have Orion surrounded by these smaller mutants who are wearing these masks, and Orion is very hesitant to fight back against them, and Rita just kind of snaps at the guy by saying, "Look, I have given you the power of the morphing grid, do you not feel it inside of you?" And after this, she just lays into him by saying, "Look, you're holding back. Does your heart bleed so easily that you would sacrifice it? In this madness, we have already lost our Red Ranger. I can't risk losing you as well." And I freaking love that speech that she gives him, because, you know, in this madness, Lauren got separated from the group, so who knows what happened to her, and Rita doesn't want to lose another Ranger because, you know, Mark's already gone missing, but seeing how Mark was already, like, timid and weak, and she probably doesn't know how much of a badass Mark has become, then she probably views Mark as dead weight, but probably does have some kind of potential. But Orion doesn't want to fight back against the smaller mutants because the reveal is they're just kids. He doesn't want to kick the crap out of kids. But let's jump back to Lauren. So Lauren is in the underground right now, and she's fighting off Rocksteady from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And she's just basically trying to avoid this rhinoceros because they keep charging at her, and she's like, look, you're going to bring this whole place down if you keep attacking us. And he doesn't care. Like, the rhinoceros, like, screw that. If it takes you down with me, I'm fine with that. So while Lauren is trying to fight off this rhinoceros looking dude, the rhinoceros gets hit by this giant laser beam. And what came to Lauren's rescue is TZ. So if you don't know what TZ is the little Zord that was created by Mark and Orion a couple of months ago before the start of the series. We do see in a flashback with them bringing TZ to life, and not only that, in the Free Comic Book Day issue, you do see when they brought TZ home, and the big ending page for the Free Comic Book Day was TZ showing up at the museum. So TZ is quite the interesting character because it looks like this little dude goes on a bunch of little adventures and just finds whatever he can find. But yeah, TZ is really cool because he's a little T-Rex sentient. I don't want to call him a Zord just yet, but a lot of people have jumped on calling him a Zord, including myself, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. But if you look at him, he's basically got all the parts of a T-Rex Zord that we've seen within the past 30 years of Power Rangers. So yeah, he kind of is a Zord. He kind of isn't confirmed yet to be a Zord, but we're going to keep calling him a Zord. But TZ shows up and manages to help Lauren. So after talking with the mutants, there was a big misunderstanding that the mutants thought that the Rangers were VR troopers, but learning that they're Power Rangers, any enemy of the Eltarians and the VR troopers is a friend of theirs. So while they're making their way through the underground and going in deeper, they begin to have a conversation about how most of the mutants end up topside and they become fodder for the troopers. And Bulk replies by saying, look, I don't think it's all the mutants, just the one from the virtual, and then he gets cut off by the mutant. And hearing him say it's just the ones from the virtual makes me believe that there are mutants within the virtual reality world coming out of it and sort of running amok within the Prime universe, because we're only like 20 or so days away from the first issue of the VR Troopers comic coming out, and that might reveal a lot with what's going on within the Power Rangers Prime universe, because from what I've been told by listening to interviews, or should I say from what I've heard from listening to interviews, is that it looks like that with each one of these issues coming out, with the VR Troopers comic and with the Power Rangers Prime comic, even though like there's a couple of issues ahead of Power Rangers Prime with the VR Troopers, it looks like the stories are kind of coincide and add up. So things that happen in Power Rangers Prime are going to get referenced in VR Troopers and stuff like that. I believe that's what they've mentioned in interviews. Don't quote me on that, but it would make sense with everything going on within the world around it. We're finally introduced to the Belly, this big, giant underground city within the Power Rangers Prime universe, and it looks amazing. I feel like Michael did an amazing job with the background and all the city landscape and stuff like that with this sort of underground city where the mutants live. And we meet up with Lauren once again, and she manages to find her father's Samuraizer. And she asks, hey, where did you find this? How did you find this? And one of the mutants is like, that piece of junk? No idea. The little red robot brings us stuff and thinks it's a game. And Lauren's like, look, this belonged to my father. So Orion then goes on to explain by saying, look, that Samuraizer came from the museum. There was a whole room of it until TZ broke into it during his activation. Then we got locked out. Got into a lot of trouble for it. Would have had lost TZ too if we hadn't hidden him. So that kind of leads up to the Free Comic Book Day issue we had last month. But learning this bit of information, Lauren soon finds out that her father or her family must be here in Angel Grove. Now, while this is all going on, we find out what happened to John and Valentina at the end of issue 5 and where they took off to running. Well, we find out they're attending this fancy party hosted by the mayor of Angel Grove, and we find out that the mayor of Angel Grove is none other than Valentina's father. And here, both parents, John's mother and Valentina's father, pull them both aside and they have this moment where they seem caring towards their children, but then you have this moment where on both panels, they're both talking down to their children. You have this scene where Valentina's father is saying, look, we're privileged. You may think that John is your best friend, but at the end of the day, you're not one of them. Don't fool yourself into thinking any differently. And then you've got John's mother pulling him aside by saying, I have given you the kind of freedom that most Eltarian children could dream of, but sometimes I forget that you're not of Earth and that will never do. Know your place. Do you understand, John? So it looks like we've got different perspectives on this prejudice and racism thing between the Eltarians and the humans, where you've got Valentina's father by saying, look, you're not one of them. You'll never be an Eltarian, so stop trying to fit in with them. And then you've got John's mother by saying, look, you're an Eltarian. Stop trying to commingle with this Earth stuff because you don't belong here. You shouldn't be acknowledging their lifestyles and what they do because you're Eltarian. You're the superior race here. So you definitely got the parents inflicting their prejudices, and you could probably say their racism towards the Earth people, saying like, look, we don't belong with these people. We're the superior being. We shouldn't be commingling with them at all. We're never going to be one of them. So stop trying to act like you can be one of them or even blend in. I might be overanalyzing it with what I'm rambling on about, but that's kind of how I saw it when I read it. So Ryan soon shows up to this party, and you have him and Valentina sort of rekindle their relationship as they express their feelings out to one another, where Valentina is definitely scared of everything that's going on right now. She doesn't quite understand why everyone's afraid of rangers, but Ryan does break down of how she's feeling right now by saying, look, she's always been kind and she's always wanted to protect people, and she's always hidden it like that, acting like it's some kind of fault in her personality that she wants to protect people, which kind of explains a lot about her. But Ryan says, look, I know what you did, and I understand why you did it, but right now we both need to figure out how we can fix this mess. Now, there's a few other things going on in the background while this event is taking place. You hear these sort of conversations with all the people talking about this meteor shower and the Eltarian forces and the VR troopers working together to stop this unknown force, apparently, which could possibly be rangers out there or something going on in the virtual reality stuff with the mutants. Not entirely sure because we only hear one half of the conversation. But while this is all going on, John is trying to get a hold of Mark because he has no idea what happened to him. And eventually he walks in on Valentina and Ryan kissing, and he kind of takes out his frustration out on Ryan with everything that's happened, but Ryan is like, look, John, I'm just trying to help you, stop twisting it, and I want to make a trade. And he takes out Mark's phone and reveals that, yeah, he's seen the text messages of John trying to get a hold of him. Now, we kind of know what that trade is going to be from all the solicitations where they want to trade Lauren for Mark. And also, it looked like when John was walking around the place, it did look like that you had his mother turning her head to the side, seeming like that she's kind of catching on to the conversation that the three were having outside. So she might be onto something, and I get the feeling that she might intercept this trade-off that's going to be happening within the next couple of issues. And what this ends up leading to is it leads to John calling Orion on an unknown number, and while he's making this phone call, he's standing with Valentina and the other VR troopers, and Orion's like, hey, did you find Mark? He's not with us right now. Is he with you? And John's like, no, but I know where we can find him, but we'll need your help. And Orion's like, great, we can work together with that, but bring Lauren with you. We'll need all the help we can get. So this is the beginning of that trade-off or of that standoff we're going to get. And this is going to go down south really quickly because you've kind of got this interworking betrayal between the teams going off, and we're going to have this hostage situation that our other heroes aren't even aware of. So we'll see exactly how that goes down and what's exactly going to happen, because this is going to go south really freaking quick if the other rangers aren't aware of what exactly is going to go on, and it's going to be a whole setup just to trade Lauren for Mark in the end. So there's going to be a lot of heads bumping in this situation. And then we've got the final page reveal, and this caught me way off guard. I was not expecting this because this changes the game a lot. This is going to go down the way I think it's going to go down. So Rita takes notice of these strange items and there's power inside of them, but but also standing in front of a bunch of tunnels, and Rita asks, how far do these tunnels go? And one of the mutants reply by saying, look, as far as we can make them, they need to go topside these days. Why do you want to go somewhere Pacific? And Rita replies with, actually, yes, there is somewhere Pacific I need to go. And then on the final panel, you see this unknown room, and you see a giant tube in the middle of it. And if you know what a giant tube means, and you know what this futuristic tech means in the middle of the room, because it looks like a power chamber, it looks like a command center, it looks like Zordon actually does exist in this world somehow, but it's just a tube she's wanting to find. So does that mean Rita can sense this really strong power that could lead to somehow to bring Zordon to this world, or a Zordon of this world into there? I have no idea, but it raises so many questions, and I have no idea what Melissa is trying to pull off here, and we'll have to see where that's going to go in next month's issue with what Rita exactly is trying to do. But overall, that is Power Rangers Prime issue 7. What did you guys think of this issue? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Like I said, this issue was a little bit talky and not enough action-y, so some people might be upset with it, but it is definitely setting up the cogs in the machine for what's going to be happening in the next couple of issues moving forward to the big reveal in issue 9. So with that said, I'll catch you guys later. Peace out, take care, and bye. Power Rangers Prime issue 8 is finally here, and this issue is insane. Not only is it the end of the second story arc within the series, it ends on a crazy cliffhanger that we kind of knew that was coming with all the solicitations for later issues and stuff like that, but it ends with the 6th Ranger showing up within Power Rangers Prime. And we'll get to that in a bit, because if you've been following online and stuff like that, you kind of know who the 6th Ranger is in Power Rangers Prime. I won't get into it just yet. I'll either save that for the end of the video or save it for next month's review and stuff like that. But this is the end of the second story arc within Power Rangers Prime. And this second story arc has been a roller coaster of events with everything going on. And definitely a game-changing moments are going to be happening within this issue. So the issue opens up 1 month ago before everything went down, and you have Valentina and Ryan sparring. And after their sparring match, it looks like they're probably sparring to vent their frustrations out on each other, or sort of some kind of argument or disagreement they just had. But you find out that Valentina wants to protest to expand refugee rights, because her dad is the mayor and it will be good press for these things to happen. But Ryan is against it, because Ryan says the Eltarians are going to get caught in the crosshair. But Valentina does say that Jun will support her decision. But Ryan is weary of Jun because he says Jun isn't his mother, you can't trust him, saying that he's Eltarian, and when it comes to Eltarians, there's still a lot to be afraid of. Which is an interesting note by Ryan, because, you know, he works under Eltarians, but he's like, look, I can trust the commander, she seems like a good person, but Jun, nah, fuck that guy, I don't trust him, he seems kind of shady, which is an interesting mindset that Ryan has, because, you know, he works under the Eltarian military, the Eltarian forces, but because Jun is kind of this rebel that's sort of throwing a wrench in everything and not following like his mother's way of doing things or the Eltarian code, then Ryan probably views Jun as a threat that can't be trusted, who is definitely going to cause a mess of things. So last month's issue had a couple of things going on that picks up in this issue. Last month's issue, you had Lauren finding her father's Samuraiser, and also Rita was able to send some interesting Morphin Grid through one of these tunnels that she wants to check out. And this issue pretty much picks up where that last one left off on, where you have the heroes underground Angel Grove heading towards that area. And Lauren is under the impression that the Eltarians have her father because, you know, if she found her father's samurais, then that means the Eltarians must have her father, like how they've got Mark. But Rita's like, look, you have no way of knowing that because these mutants could have gotten that morpher from anywhere. And this is where Rita begins to bump heads with Orion and Lauren. Not only that, she lays it on thick on Orion, giving it to him straight by saying, look, the reason why Mark was captured so quickly is because he was scared. And you'll know better because Orion I can see the anger buried deep inside of you, and one day it will get you into trouble, and you'll find no outlet. Now, her saying that is definitely setting up something for Orion later down the line in the nearby future, because, Orion probably has a lot of anger issues that we've seen, but we have yet to see him like fully snap and fully vent with everything going on, because if issue 10 is going to be a Jun-focused episode, I get the feeling that Melissa will be wanting to set up an Orion flashback or an Orion-focused issue later down the line with everything going on. But Rita's like, look, enough standing around. If you leave now, you will fail because you are not prepared. You need training. You need Zords. And Lauren's like, look, how would you know what we need? You're a demented space witch. And right away, Rita hits them with some magic and they start freaking out. And Rita's like, look, I am much more than you know. I have known goodness, I have known evil, and I know the pitfalls of both, which makes me wonder. I was kind of thrown off by it by a couple of issues ago, wondering what Rita is this, but hearing that line, it makes me wonder, is this Rita from the other universe in the Prime universe with that line? Because, that Rita was good, that Rita was bad, and she's kind of learnt a bit of both going back and forth. So we'll see what's going on. But Rita then says this, and this is true. The Morphin Grid does not play favorites. It manages a balance, and should you swallow yourself in your own hubris, it will correct them. So, once again, she's right about that by saying, look, the Morphin Grid is the balance between good and evil, and if you just do your own thing, the Morphin Grid will correct that because, we can't have that balance thrown off. So there has to be that balance between good and evil, and if that balance is thrown off, then the Morphin Grid will correct that. And Rita is definitely right about that because the Prime Rangers have no experience being Rangers, right? Maybe Lauren has some experience, but we don't know the extent of that. But these Rangers have been Rangers for like less than 24 hours within the time period of Power Rangers Prime, and their first fight was up against the VR Troopers and Eltarian forces, so they were thrown into the fire right away and they barely made it out alive. So these Rangers have a long road ahead of them if they want to actually start working together and working in sync as a team. And we kind of do see that in this issue near the end, but we are far from having this team work in unison with everything going on around them. And this is probably like we're very early into this story, so we have yet to see the team fully come together and start working together properly as an actual Ranger team. So hopefully Rita can be the proper mentor that these Rangers need and bring the team together. Rita then goes on to tell the two Rangers by saying, look, yes, I need Rangers, but I don't need you. As easily as I granted these powers, I can take them away. And Lauren and Orion decide to test that, and the three of them get into a fight. And we don't really get to see this fight, unfortunately. We get to see like one panel of it, that's about it, of them charging towards each other. But we don't get to see how this fight actually went down. But you do find out that, both sides end up walking away, so I guess they were evenly matched or something like that, and Rita didn't take away their powers in the end. But I kind of wish we got to see that fight. Now, one character that's been fascinating to follow in Power Rangers Prime is Bulk in this universe because, we first met Bulk as this bumbling soldier in a way, and now he's just kind of along for the ride in Power Rangers Prime, and he's sort of questioning the world around him as a lot of his views and everything has changed within the Prime universe with how the world works around him. And he even says that he probably could have lived up here the whole time and not known about any of it, and he would have been okay, because he says not everyone has to be a hero. But he brings up a point that I'm sure a lot of people ask themselves every day with everything they see going on in the world and everything happening around them. He says he knows now, but if he chooses to ignore it, does that make him a villain? So he's kind of questioning, like I said, questioning the things going on around him within this universe, because it's opened up his eyes to this massive universe with how the Eltarians work, how his fellow soldiers work, his views on Rangers and stuff like that. It's like a whole universe that has opened up around him. So while he's sort of talking to himself and TZ, I guess, because TZ's there too, he's got this little jade orb and he throws it at the TZ to play fetch with, and he runs off to go find him. where this takes them is to what seems to be a power chamber. So Bulk goes into this power chamber and Rita's there too, and Bulk keeps saying, oh, I might be a fugitive, I might not have a job anymore, and Rita says, well, you're still here, which is true. Bulk could have walked away from any of this any time, but he's stuck around thick and thin since issue 2, following Rita around. And Rita says, look, I could give you this Babel and your freedom without a condition, but what would you do with it? And Bulk's like, I don't know. And Rita's like, do you consider yourself a hero? And Bulk says, no, but I've seen things now and it's hard for me to forget them, but it doesn't stop me from being afraid though. So Rita then compliments him by saying, look, perhaps you're not the idiot I thought you were. And she peers into the green orb, and you do see her reflection in the orb, but one thing you also do see within the reflection of the orb is what looks like the sort of Dragon Zord symbol, sort of like the footprint that you see that we all know about. So that's kind of a reflection we see in the orb. So shout out to Michael once again doing amazing artwork for this series. Like Michael once again is killing it and does a fantastic job with this series. And the artwork in this issue once again is amazing. Now Rita does raise the jade orb above her head and it begins sort of shooting out this green lightning. I'm not entirely sure what it does, but I think what she does is she uses it to power up the power chamber that we're in right now. And she then goes on to say by saying, this is a place lost to time, but the pull of the Morphin Grid was quite strong here. My skin tingles from power, how I was drawn to it. And then Bulk asks, saying, look, if you can do all of this stuff, why did you create Rangers? Why not take all this power for yourself? And Rita's like, oh, believe me, I tried. But perhaps I do not trust the power within myself, which is another interesting note about this Rita, by saying, I don't trust the power within myself. And then you get this awesome, like, close-up of Rita drawn by Michael, and you have her eyes closed, and she says, perhaps I no longer understand what is good and what is evil. Again, this is another sort of possible tease. This is the Rita from the previous Boom universe, like the mainline universe from the Boom comics. The Rita that was trapped in the dumpster at the end. Like, I feel like that is that Rita. Like, this is that Rita. But she says, or what is the point of it either? Or perhaps it was the Morphin Grid who called out to me, who asked me an impossible task, and in my foolishness I accepted it, as I believed those children could be taken on it, or could take it on. And again, we get this awesome close-up of Rita opening her eyes up, and just the artwork is amazing. Michael killed it with this issue. I love it. I love it. Now, while all of this is happening, you've got the VR troopers, Valentina and Jun, sort of working together with this hostage negotiation. And the place they chose for the hostage negotiation is sort of this Japanese temple. And what's interesting is what Valentina brings up is that this is a sort of temple, or a sort of temple or a shrine that Ryan trained with his father at. So, you know, all those early episodes of VR Troopers from back in the day when you would see Ryan training with his father, this is one of those places. So that's an interesting note. Not only that, the artwork looks fantastic, which I've said already. So it looks like the negotiations are being set up right now. And this is when it leads to the big climax of this issue, with everything going down when the hostage negotiations begin. And this is when the hostage negotiations begin with the VR troopers and the Rangers, where Lauren shows up and she's like, look, if we work together, we can work as a team, we can find Mark and we can find my family. But Lauren is soon jumped by the VR troopers and she's attacked by this like gun electric rope thingy-majig, and she's quickly subdued and captured by the VR troopers, and she's laying there on the ground on paint, and everyone's confused about what's happening because they had no idea this was part of the plan. And Ryan's like, look, you guys walk away because she's the only one on Eltar's radar. you guys aren't, so you can walk away from this and we'll take it from here. And Valentina says, well, what are they going to do with her? What's going to happen to her? And Ryan's like, look, that's not my issue. I'm not paid enough to deal with that stuff, or that's above my pay grade. And Valentina's like, look, well, maybe you should know about that stuff that happens, because you're always telling me why I need to be afraid all the time of all these rangers, so let them go. And Ryan's like, look, Valentina, you have a lot more to lose, because what will happen to your father the minute he finds out that the Eltarians know you've joined forces with a ranger? And Valentina basically embraces her role as a ranger here, where a couple of issues ago, she wanted nothing to do with it. And she's like, look, I'm a ranger now, and there's no taking that back anymore. So this is when things get crazy. So you have Mark, and he freaking charges at Caitlin and manages to break free. Then you've got Lauren like headbutting Ryan right in the face. So you have all the rangers coming together. So you've got all 5 rangers together again once more. And Ryan's wiping the blood off his face, and he's like, look, one chance, last chance, is either her or all of you. And then Lauren replies with, it looks like it's going to be all of us, Ben. And you've got the other rangers staring down the VR troopers. And then on the next page, we get this awesome splash page of everyone morphing, and it looks fantastic. I mean, I've been singing Michael's praises through this entire video, and once again, this is another fantastic page, because we get to see an awesome morphing sequence as all the helmets start forming on the rangers' faces. But not only that, we get a good close-up look on their power coins, their giant power coins. And although we don't know what the name of the motif animals are for the rangers yet, this is our first good look at them up close, which is great to see, because they've always been far away, they've been hard to see, but this is our first actual good look at them. So hopefully we'll find out what the themes for our rangers are eventually. So this is when a brawl breaks out between both sides, and it is freaking amazing, because like I said, we kind of start seeing our heroes working together here. We've got freaking Lauren and Valentina facing off against Ryan. We've got Mark and Jun up against JB, and then we've got Orion up against Caitlin. And like I said, everyone's evenly kind of matched here. Some few good hits are thrown in against everyone, where some people are caught off guard, but the fight comes to a close when JB lets off an EMP, and it forces everyone to demorph, and they're barely able to move. So even though the EMP was kind of out of pocket, this is for the VR troopers to start sort of cleaning up the mess and start arresting everyone, so the fight didn't instigate further. But Ryan is concerned about Valentina, but she's upset. You've got Mark having another asthma attack with everything going on, and Jun's helping him out. And Ryan gives Lauren another chance by saying, look, it's either you or all of them. What is it going to be? Because this sort of hostage negotiation that Ryan planned, it went south right away. It probably didn't go the way he was expecting it was going to go in the end. But like I said, Ryan gives Lauren a chance to surrender, or he's going to arrest everyone here. But suddenly you hear a voice by saying, look, how about a third choice? Perhaps we take out all of you. And standing above one of the buildings is the brand new 6th Ranger for Power Rangers Prime, the Green Ranger, who is Rita Repulsa, which, spoilers, but the covers are out now. I've talked about it on the channel. You've probably seen them by now. But yeah, the 6th Ranger is Rita Repulsa, if you didn't know already. So that is where issue 8 ends of Power Rangers Prime, and this was a really good issue. This was a crazy way to end the second story arc with everything going on, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next, where it's going to go moving forward with Power Rangers Prime, so we'll have to wait and see. But overall, I really enjoyed this issue, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next month in Power Rangers Prime in August, when we have our Green Ranger showing up on the scene. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But anyway, guys, what did you think of Power Rangers Prime issue 8? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And with that said, I will catch you guys later. Peace out. Take care. Bye. Rita Repulsa as the Green Ranger is insane, and I feel like we even haven't scratched the surface of what her full potential can be as a Ranger within the Prime universe. So, let's talk about Power Rangers Prime issue 9 because there is a lot to go over with this one issue. So the issue opens up with a flashback 1 week ago, I guess before the series even began, and Rita is in her space dumpster. And you've got a narrating sort of talking about the lives that she led or she could have led within these different alternate timelines. And you see Mystic Mother, you see Mistress Vile, and then you see the Prime Rita. And then on the next page, you get this amazing double page spread by Michael, and Michael's artwork in this issue kills it. Michael always kills it with his artwork in Power Rangers Prime, but on this issue was amazing. But what we get is we get this giant 2-page spread of, we see this, basically this shattering glass, and we see all these different timelines of Rita, of what Rita could have been. And there's like so many we can go over, like Gladiator Rita, Explorer Rita, Pilot Rita, it looks like, Monk Rita. There are so many Ritas within this universe that we can go over within this universe. But Rita says that she used to believe in good and evil and believe in will, but now she says she just believes in surviving and taking whatever form of survival she can take to survive. Now, is this the old Rita Repulsa from the old universe that ended with her being trapped in the dumpster at the end of Darkest Hour? Honestly, no idea. I don't think we're going to get a proper confirmation until Melissa finally confirms it. But there is a line in this issue that does maybe confirm it, but I don't know. I don't think Melissa's going to spell it out for us. I think we have to sort of decide, is this the Rita Repulsa we knew from the other series, or is this a different Rita that's sort of seen all these different realities that of the person she could have been, and she's just going to survive moving forward? I have no idea, but we'll get to that line when we touch upon it. So right away, this issue picks up where the last issue left off on, where Rita is now the Green Ranger, and right away, she jumps right into action. And I gotta say, these action scenes we get where Rita is just easily making mincemeat of the VR troopers within the first couple of pages is really freaking amazing. Like, she backhands freaking Ryan with her wand, and then JB she easily deals with. And then she finds Caitlin. Now, Caitlin's able to hold her own against Rita in this fight, but I feel like Rita was holding back because Rita could have probably easily wiped the floor with the VR troopers if she wanted to, but she was essentially putting on a show. Because it seems like that Rita was caught by Caitlin when she uses her Shadow Clone Jutsus on her, but Rita just takes it up to like 11, takes it up to 100, you could say, because she uses her magic to make the VR troopers' car just fall out of the sky and nearly crush the VR troopers, but then she escapes with all the commotion, and then she begins using her magic, and what she does is you've got Bulk and TZ sort of watching from afar on the mountainsides, and Rita begins to use her magic powers to make TZ grow. And I love a line that she says to Mark and Orion by saying, "Look, I should thank you, Blue and Pink, because you never understood the full potential of these little machines, because once they grow, they become quite monstrous." And I freaking love that. Like, Rita's able to turn this little teeny tiny Zord into a beast. Like, she's able to use her magic wand to make something grow, and turning TZ into like a full-on Zord is freaking amazing, because TZ in this form is giving the VR troopers a run for their money as they're trying to dodge the fireballs and dodge all the blast, and they're sort of running on fumes right now as they're barely able to keep up. And it almost looked like it's going to be the end for the VR troopers, but Lauren quickly decides, look, we're not getting anywhere this way, so she jumps right in front of TZ and says, look, stop it. And I like TZ's expression here. It looks really freaking cool, like the size of him compared to Lauren. Like, he is a giant Zord, but Rita's pissed off and she's like, what are you doing? This is our chance to destroy them. And Valentina's like, what makes you think we want to do that? And Rita's like, well, I certainly do, which kind of got a laugh out of me with her response, because she was like ready to destroy the VR troopers and pull them apart. Like, she, like I said, if she went all out against the VR troopers in this situation, I think they wouldn't be standing right now. They'd probably be like in the hospital or even worse, dead at this point, because like Rita's whole sort of philosophy in this universe, this Rita, she's built on survival of the fittest. So she would have taken them out without even like holding back if she wanted to, but she could have wiped the floor with him. So Lauren decides to negotiate with the VR troopers because she does say to Rita by saying, "You said I need to be a leader, right?" And Rita then goes on to say by saying, "Look, martyrs are only useful in history books, child. I'm not a martyr any more than you are a ranger." So I really like that response that she said there. But Lauren tries to bargain with what's left of this negotiation they can strike with the VR troopers by saying, "Look, take me, but let my friends go." And Ryan's like, "Look, I think we're past that part already, aren't we?" And Lauren says, "Look, it doesn't have to be unless you want our T-Rex friend back in action. And I don't know if you're up to take on all of us right now." So she's calling the shots right now. So she says, "Look, as talented as you guys are, I doubt you can take all 6 of us on, plus this sword." Now, Valentina is questioning what does Lauren get out of this by turning herself in, but Lauren's response is simply power. So after that, time passes and Orion is pissed off with Rita by saying, "Look, you could have stopped this. All this time, you could have taken that power." And I love Rita's response here by saying, "Look, I'm no ranger. I'm not pure of heart. I'm not here to save my fellow man. To deny myself this power was a favor to you." And she goes on to say by saying, "Look, I once tasted power darker and more dangerous than you could ever comprehend, and I destroyed worlds with it. You, Orion, you've lost everything. In my place, would have you done the same?" And Orion replies with, "No. Then do not judge me for my actions, and I will not judge you for your inaction." And again, once again, Rita's response is putting the Rangers in their place by saying, "Look, we are nothing alike. We are not the same." So again, Rita, once again, freaking awesome with how Melissa writes this character. So again, that line by saying Rita saying, "I once tasted power more darker and dangerous than you could ever comprehend, and I destroyed worlds with it." So is that implying that was the Rita who was Mistress Vile, or is that just a Rita who had a glimpse of what Mistress Vile could do and she saw sort of that different reality or that alternate timeline? I have no idea at this point. But again, Rita is freaking awesome in this comic and I freaking love her. So the next plan of action or the next plan of attack is to find out where they're taking or where they're keeping Lauren, because that's probably going to be their next biggest battle with all the solicitations and everything they're teasing, especially where this issue ends up on, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So one thing I want to bring up is Mark is enamored by Rita being a ranger, and he's like, "Look, you're a ranger. You figured out how to give us powers. Power up TZ. Can you do more than that?" And Rita's like, "Finally, one of you is asking the right questions." And that's where that ends. So while that's all going on, you've got the VR troopers driving Lauren to wherever they're taking her in their banged up car. And I mean, they are just riding this thing along the road. The windows are all smashed, the hood's all banged up. It has seen better days probably. So we have this conversation where Lauren is talking with the VR troopers, and she doesn't seem scared. She even points out how awkward this situation is, but she then goes on to talk about her father and how her father was a great ranger and how she hopes to be a great ranger like him. And the VR troopers do ask, what happened to your father? And she says, "Well, he was taken away, and I'm hoping that maybe where you're taking me, I can reunite with him, because I haven't seen him since I was a teenager, and I've lived on nothing but hope for many years." So she's hoping that going to this prison, she'll get to reunite with her father. So once inside the prison, this is where we learn a lot with how the Eltarians deal with things, but not only that, how they sort of view rangers. So right away, she's put in this containment, and they've taken away her power coin so she can no longer morph. And she asks one of the Eltarians by saying, "Am I terrifying to you?" And Janessa responds with, "You have no idea." So this is when we sort of see more of the Eltarians from behind the scenes. We see this giant Eltarian council of all these different Eltarians, each one of them kind of looking like, I guess, a different kind of Eltarian. One of them looks like the Kingpin from Spider-Man. I will say that. One of them looks like the Kingpin from Spider-Man. And then we've got the other one called Yolem, I believe their name is. And they kind of look like the freaking Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen. So we've got some really interesting Eltarian designs here. But one of them finally confirms all my theories for so long, and that is Zardoz is in this universe. Is it the same Zardoz we saw from the Eltarian War? No idea, that hasn't been confirmed yet, but he kind of understands the threat of the situation going on. So the Council of Eltarians asked Janessa, saying, look, have you started using the brain testers yet? Have they dug into her brain yet to sort of probe her mind? And Janessa's like, look, human minds are fragile. If we dig too deep into them, the brain might break. So they don't want to turn into a vegetable if they sort of probe her brain too hard. So Janessa's like, look, I prefer to use gentle methods when extracting information. So we'll see what her methods are going to be moving forward. I get the feeling they'll probably try and use Lauren's family against her, or in a hostage situation in kind of way. So we'll see what happens. I wouldn't say that's more of a gentle information, but they're probably not going to pick her brain apart, but they'll probably use like psychological warfare to sort of get answers from her. But like I said, Zardoz is here, and one threat that he's worried about is Rita, because he says the Space Witch has created more Rangers, and if she's out there, then the Morphin energy is bleeding off this planet, so it's creating more threats out there that are Rangers. So they need to capture Rita and every Ranger she's created, because they can't allow the Morphin grid to be accessed so easily. So now the Eltarians' plan makes sense. They want to control the Morphin grid. That makes sense that they want to control the Morphin grid and sort of get a hold of it. That's probably why they had all those morphers on display. That's probably why they had all those morphers in there. The power coin, it kind of makes sense. The Eltarians are sort of gathering items that can access the Morphin grid and sort of strip them away, sort of keep them for themselves. So that way Rangers aren't a threat anymore. So Zardoz is here, but he says, look, we can't trust the human VR troopers or the human troopers with such a task, so they're going to be using one of their own for this mission. And this is when we get the reveal of the big boss of this story arc of Power Rangers Prime for the past year. Well, I guess this character has probably been lurking in the shadows for a while, even though they were introduced in this issue, but this is the big next main threat moving forward. This is who we're meant to be worried about, not the VR troopers. We are meant to be worried about Volar, who is the father of John and the partner of Janessa. And this guy looks menacing, I will say that, because when he steps forward on that final page, you see this big menacing grin on his face. You can see his golden Eltarian eyes, but not only that, he's got a scar across his face. One of his eyes are blacked out. I don't know if that was sort of like the lighting of the room or he sort of got injured in battle, but this guy, because we see what he looks like on the cover of issue 11, he is definitely a threat moving forward, and we'll probably learn more about him in next month's issue, because that is going to be a Jun-focused issue, and preview pages for issue 11 have kind of dropped, and we kind of have an idea what this guy is about, but I feel like this is the big main antagonist of this main story arc for Power Rangers Prime for the first year run of this series. So we'll see where that's going to go moving forward. But Power Rangers Prime issue 13 was amazing. I can't wait to see more of Rita as the Green Ranger, because I feel like, like I said, we've only scratched the potential of what she can do. And she's already teased the mark that she can do a lot more. So we'll see what's going to happen moving forward. But we've got our big main boss here. We've got Rita as the Sixth Ranger. Lauren's been captured, and we'll see what's going to happen to her moving forward. And the VR troopers, I get the feeling they're going to move away from the Eltarian sort of forces and do their own thing once they sort of see what's actually happening behind the scenes with everything going on. So that's going to be interesting moving forward. But what did you guys think of Power Rangers Prime issue 9? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And with that said, I'll catch you guys later. Peace out. Take care. Bye. Alright, so we are back once again this month with another Power Rangers Prime comic review, this time talking about issue 10. So issue 10 is a Jun-focused issue, but not only that, we're also introduced to what seems to be one of the overarching antagonists of this very first story arc, and that is Jun's father, known as Volar. And Volar is definitely a threat to be reckoned with, from what we've seen so far, because this dude is cold, menacing, calculating. This guy looks like he's going to be trouble for our Rangers to deal with as we get closer to the finale of this very first story arc. So I do wonder how our heroes are going to deal with Jon's father, because the dude looks like complete brute force with how he fights, especially how he was able to make do with Jon so easily at the end of this issue. So let's talk about Power Rangers Prime issue 10. So the issue opens up with a flashback 14 years ago in the past, and these 14 years, these flashbacks we're going to see within this issue are going to be really important. So you've got a little Jon sitting outside on the balcony because he doesn't want to hear his parents arguing because they're arguing about him. And basically what it is, it's Valar who doesn't want Jon to be raised on Earth because, he's getting accustomed to Earth's ways and he believes it's making him weak, and not letting him become a true Eltarian warrior. And here we're introduced to Maria, and Maria is Valentina's mother. Now, this is the first time we see this character introduced, and it might be the last time we see this character introduced with what happens to her. Now, we'll get to the fate of Maria in this series later down the line, or in this issue later down the line, because there's a lot to pack in with what happens to her, or what's implied that happened to her within this flashback. So Jon isn't the biggest fan of his parents arguing because, they don't like Earth culture and stuff like that, or Valar doesn't like Earth's culture because, he despises Earth. But eventually you've got Janessa taking Jon inside, and this is where we're introduced to Valar for the very first time within this flashback. And this guy looks menacing as fuck. Just the way he stands over Jon is really intimidating because, you have this scene where Jon calls him Papa, and he's like, don't call me that, that's an Earth term. So you can see this guy despises Earth and basically their ways, which I've mentioned like 5 times in this review already, but, the guy hates Earth. He hates us Earthlings, but he has a test for Jon to do, and what it is basically holding this little triangle thing, this little pool cue you could see, and he holds it, and it begins glowing, and Valar says not to scream. And you can hear Janessa listening from the outside of the door, and you can hear Jon screaming. So whatever this thing is, I believe it tests your power, or is basically an endurance test, which is something we'll see later on in the issue, but it's like a torture device, but it's like an endurance device. I don't know, but it's pretty messed up. So after that, we then cut to the present, and you've got Jon and Mark sitting in Mark's apartment, and they're sort of going over what kind of plan they can have to save Lauren. But Jon does say that there will be a plan to save Lauren in the end, and one of the plans that Jon has is joining the Eltarian Guardians, which is something we know of in the Power Rangers lore, but Jon is willing to go back to his homeworld and join his home customs to save Lauren in the end. But you have the scene where Jon mentions about shaving his head, and Mark gives a compliment by saying he likes his hair, and Jon thanks him for the compliment. So, elephant in the room. These two are definitely setting up to be some kind of couple. I mean, so many people have said it in my comment section, like the chemistry and the sparks are there for Jon and Mark to be a couple. And if you've seen all the variant covers, the signs are there. So the shipping is strong with these two. And like I said, the chemistry has been there since issue 2 or issue 1. And it looks like that Melissa has slowly been nudging a relationship between the two of them. So you have this scene where they do lean in close together, but it's soon broken up by Doobie licking all over their face. So you have that scene there. But like I mentioned, the chemistry between Jon and Mark have been there since issue 2. And if these two don't get together by the end of this story arc, then they'll probably confess their feelings for one another. Because, the chemistry is there between the two of them, and Melissa is definitely teasing something between the two of them. So Jun soon returns back to his apartment and he's attacked by his father, but he's able to stop the attack and his father's impressed with how much he's grown recently. But Janessa soon pulls Jun aside into another room, and this is where pieces start to come together, because she then goes on to tell Jun by saying, "I knew it was a risk to raise you on Earth. Your father never agreed, but he only saw who he wanted you to be, never who you really were. You're kind, Jun, sensitive. Had I had my way, you would have been a sage, not a guardian. But none of that matters now in giving you much freedom, as I believe I have ruined you. And I believe I have ruined you. You protected the girl and you hid her." So she pulls up the security footage and she sees Jun and the others with Lauren. So that way she's aware with everything going on right now. Not that he's a ranger just yet, but she's aware that Jun had been harboring Lauren with the security footage that they review. So she then goes on to say by saying, "Your father is on the way now to interrogate her, and you know his methods. She will not hide from him. He will discover your involvement and Valentina's involvement, and he will show no mercy. So tell me, Jun, what do you know about the Power Rangers?" So this is when we jump into another flashback 13, 14 years ago in the past. And this is where we learn about the Maria stuff that I've been talking about earlier. We then have Maria telling Jun this story, or this is also Jun's imagination from the stories that he's been hearing from Maria. And we see these really interesting designs for Rangers. We see Red Samurai, we see Kaku Ranger Blue, and then we see pink or purple Five-Man, I believe. So we see some really interesting designs, but Maria then goes on to say that the Rangers were heroes who fought battles the rest of the world could not. And Jun's like, with monsters? And then we see all these different battles that are being taken place where you've got all these like different quote-unquote putties or grunts being fought off against the Ranger. You see the Dino Megazord, and you then go on to hear from Maria by saying, "Sometimes the monsters can take many forms. They fought evil, but they didn't always win. But that wasn't the point. The point was that the Power Rangers chose to try again, and they never fought alone." So after that, you have Valentina and Jun sort of drawing on the floor, and Jun sort of drawing his own little Power Ranger, and he says he wants to be a Ranger. But we then have, I believe, Maria by saying, "The Power Rangers were a myth. The story I told you was just one of them I read online, and the pictures I showed are just make-believe." So Valentina then goes on to say, because we see her as a younger kid, by saying, "Yeah, my mum likes to tell stories, but Jun believes or asks they were once real, asks if they were real at one point." And Maria then goes on to say by saying, "Jun, the point is you can be whatever you want to be, no matter where you come from." So that's where we sort of get Jun having that inspiration that no matter where you come from, you can be a hero. And I guess that's where his inspiration to be a Ranger also comes from, because, Jun has always been obsessed with Power Rangers ever since we met him, and he wants to learn more. Now we kind of know who put the idea in his head. That was Valentina's mother. So after that, you then have Jun's mother walking in, and she listens into the story, and Valentina's mother tries to explain herself by saying, "Look, I was just telling the kids a story," but Janessa's like, "I know what you were doing, please come with me." So the two walk away, and that's where that flashback ends. But Jun then goes on to say, by telling Janessa, by saying, "You never explain what happened to Valentina's mother. Valentina cried for weeks, and I don't know what was worse, her not knowing or me thinking you had something to do with it." And then Jun's mother goes on to reply by saying, "Maria was a good employee, a good citizen, but we don't speak of those things for a reason." And Jun goes on to reply by saying, "Because Eltar wants control, no matter who gets hurt, right, mother?" And then he's pointing inside the prison cell where Lauren's getting interrogated by Valor, and you see her being you see Lauren holding on to that triangle thing we saw earlier, and you hear her screaming. But Janessa says to Jun by saying, look, you chose to involve yourself in a situation much bigger than yourself despite every warning telling you not to. And now there's consequences for your actions, and now you have to live with them. So she then goes on to tell Jun by saying, look, you can't keep living in both worlds. You don't get to pick a side and choose with which one you think is right. You're Eltarian, act like it. So yeah, she then goes on the walk away, but this is where Jun has his big epic moment by saying, I'm Eltarian, but I choose to be a ranger. And he then morphs into Black Prime. And we have this awesome splash color page where he morphs into his Black Ranger suit. And Lauren's about to go through the next phase of being interrogated, but Vala is probably going to kill her with these methods. And although Janessa tries to stop him, he doesn't seem like he wants to listen. But this is where Jun quickly jumps in and starts kicking the crap out of both of his parents, and he starts beginning to free Lauren. So Jun gets into a fight with his father, and he's easily outmatched. Even picking up like his special bow staff and a giant hammer, he's easily subdued by his father. He just gets grabbed by the neck and like slammed into the wall, and Valor begins to choke him out. And while he's getting choked out, it looks like it's almost the end for Jun as he's getting strangled. But his mother picks up the hammer and smashes Valor across the face with it. And this is where we get to the final couple of pages of Power Rangers Prime issue 10, where Janessa says, Jun, show me, is it really you? And he removes his helmet and says, it's me, I'm sorry, mother. Please help me. And that's where the issue ends. So, Power Rangers Prime issue 10 was a really good Jun-focused issue. I mean, this was Jun's resolve. This is what he wanted to do in the end. And this is his path moving forward. So this is something I've been saying about the character for the longest time. He's Eltarian, but he wants to be an Eltarian raised on Earth who's going to be a ranger. So he's throwing away his traditional Eltarian customs and ways of living to be an Earthling, to be a ranger. And that's something I've said about the character Jun for the longest time, and it looks like that's what he's finally doing. But overall, this was a really fantastic episode, or issue of Power Rangers Prime issue 10. We've got only 2 more issues to go for the story arc, and I do wonder where it's going to go moving forward. I'm really excited to see where it's going to go moving forward, because it looks like the big final showdown with Vola is going to be freaking crazy, especially with the cover for next month where you've got all these Rangers fighting against them. So we'll see where that's going to go. But overall, a fantastic issue of Power Rangers Prime, and I can't wait to see how this very first story arc is going to wrap up and what's going to happen after it. So with that said, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out. Take care. Bye. So Power Rangers Prime has introduced the final boss for the very first story arc, Volar the Eltarian, who is the father of Jun, and this guy is a freaking menace. Not only that, in issue 11 of Power Rangers Prime, we learned some very interesting reveals that a lot of people have been wanting to know ever since this series began, but not only that, it's teasing other big reveals we'll probably get in the next issue that is the finale of this very first story arc. And oh boy, whatever Melissa is cooking up, I am really, really freaking excited for it, because Power Rangers Prime is going to continue past issue 12, and definitely what's setting up in this issue is definitely going to come into play within the next story arc. So let's get into Power Rangers Prime issue 11. So, in the last issue, you had Jun finally confronting his father, but he wasn't strong enough to beat him, and he ended up asking his mother for help. And that's going to come into play later on in the issue where we'll see where that went. But essentially, this issue picks up, or opens up, with a flashback 6 years ago out in New Zealand. And essentially it's the Sheba family hiding out basically on this little house on the hill surrounded by water in the outskirts of New Zealand. And you've got Lauren and Jaden, they're playing hide and seek, and while Lauren's looking for Jaden, she stumbles across her father's ranger suit, but also his morpher. And the ranger suit we see is that suit that we saw when Power Rangers Prime was first revealed, the classic Power Rangers samurai outfit, but also like the brand new look to it with sort of the original samurai design going on for it. It looked really freaking cool. It's a shame we never got to see Lauren use this in the actual series, but finally we get to see it just hanging up in the closet. So Lauren confronts her father on what she found and finds out that her father's been lying. And Mr. Sheba just like casually brushes it off by saying, "Good evening to you, Lauren." And this is when Lauren sort of lashes out at her father by saying, "Look, we're Power Rangers. You raised me to be proud of that." And Mr. Sheba's like, "Look, you can still be." But Lauren's like, "Look, we're hiding like cowards. Doesn't it mean anything to you anymore?" And this is where we get a moment from Mr. Sheba, and this speech is definitely going to sort of pay off in the issue later on with the decision that Lauren is going to make for her family in the end, where Mr. Sheba says, "Every day I think about what we are and what it means not to be able to use this. I recognize the honor, the responsibility. I wonder if I'm betraying you. This is your birthright and Jaden's." So talking about them being like the successor of the Power Rangers Samurai Morpher or being Samurai Rangers in general. But then he goes on to say, "But what good is honor if I lose you two in the process? I used to think that I was nothing more than important being a Power Ranger, but then I lost your mother, and I learned very quickly I am a father who will always choose my family first. I hope that's a realization you never have to make." So that is definitely foreshadowing a decision that Lauren is going to make later on in the issue. After that, we then cut to the present, and due to the events of what happened in issue 10, you've got Lauren being transported to a different facility now, and this is where we see Volar's interrogation tactics like come into full play with the mental gymnastics and the mental manipulation that he does to his prisoners. So when Lauren's blindfold is removed, you see Mr. Sheba standing right before her. And this guy looks like a mess. I mean, he's chained up from like arms and his legs. He looks really skinny, like the guy's been starved. And he just looks like bugged out of his mind with the expression he's got on his eyes. And Lauren quickly runs to see him to see if everything's fine. And she says, "Look, I knew I would find you here. Where's Jaden?" And Mr. Sheba's response isn't, "Thank you for saving me," or "I love you," or anything like that. It's, "You should have stayed away." And the expression you see on Lauren's face is that she's about to tear up from hearing those words. And this is where we see Volar once again being like the master manipulator in this situation by saying, "Look, like I said, we can help each other. Your father and I have gotten to know each other, Lauren. He has told me many things about you, about your brother, all very enlightening. He was proud of you once." And Lauren's under the assumption that something's happened to him, like what did Volar do to him? But Mr. Sheba says, "Lauren, they have Jaden." And we know that Lauren's going to be looking for Jaden in the next story arc in issue 13 once that story arc starts up, and we'll see where that's going to go. So really curious to see what's happening with Jaden in the Power Rangers Prime universe. But Mr. Sheba says, "Look, they've got Jaden and they'll take him away for good this time, but we can get him back. We can be a family again if you help them." And this is where Lauren says, "Look, but you told me." And this is where the advice that Mr. Sheba said at the start of that flashback sort of comes into play. "I told you beyond any duty, the power I chose was my family first." And this is where Volar sort of chimes in by saying, "As will I. So tell me where your rangers are, Lauren." And that's where that ends. So it's unsure if Lauren sold out like the other Rangers to Volar in the end or gave their location away. We're not entirely sure because she is going to be joining the fight in the final issue, no doubt about it. But from what little we've seen of Volar so far, like his physical prowess with how he was able to deal with Jun so easy, even in Ranger form, and his mental games he's playing with his prisoners, this guy is like a huge threat for our Rangers. And I can understand why Janessa wants him out of the picture, why she wants him gone. And we're going to jump back to our other Rangers right now because it's all going to tie together very, very soon. All right, so this is the big reveal that everyone has been waiting for Power Rangers Prime. The theme and the motif of the Rangers within this series. It's something that people have been wondering and speculating for the longest time. Now, thanks to Boom Studios sending me an early copy of Power Rangers Prime issue 11, I was quick to jump on this like right away, so you're probably seeing that video before this review goes live, no doubt about it. But we finally learned the themes for the Rangers in Power Rangers Prime. So you have Rita, Mark, and Orion in this sort of like abandoned power chamber. And it looks so freaking fascinating with what we see with it, because it kind of looks like the old school power chamber from like Z1 Turbo with how the floor layout is going. But then also you kind of see like the control panels, like it's something like out of the Mega Voyager from like in space. Like it looks like a power chamber that's sort of like pulling from like all sorts of series from Power Rangers here. But this is the reveal we get for the themes of the Rangers. So we've got a Tyrannosaurus Rex for the Red Ranger, a Velociraptor for the Pink Ranger, a Basilisk for the Black Ranger, a Griffin for the Yellow Ranger, a Dragon for the Green Ranger, and a Unicorn for the Blue Ranger. Now, I know you're thinking, like even Orion points it out by saying, like, you're mad, I don't know any of these animals. And Mark quickly corrects him by saying, look, you wouldn't really know that because, you know, they're Earth-based, so that's like, it's something kind of like that Earthlings only know about. But Orion's like, look, I know what dinosaurs are. I know they were real, but the rest, they're just myths. There's no theme here. And I find that funny where Orion says there's no theme here, because, like, one of the critiques I've seen for Power Rangers Prime is that, like, people said, like, there's no theme going on. There's, like, they don't understand it because, like, the theme doesn't match. But Rita soon says the theme for these creatures is power. The theme is power. And Pink, you're wrong. They did exist. Even if they, like the Rangers, faded away from memory and time, Earth has strong ties to the Morphin Grid. These creatures, all extinct, carried the power within them. Combined with these precious elements, their spirits lend these coins to a greater strength. So, Rita then goes on to say by saying, look, there's a big battle coming, and we're going to need Zords. So, she even points out TZ by saying, look, TZ was like the step in the right direction to form a Zord, but we need more of them, and once they combined, that is definitely going to give us the advantage. And I really like it when Rita's sort of like talking about, like, we need more like TZ, and like you have Doobie barking, and she's like, no, not you. We don't need you at all. But Doobie was essentially barking, saying that, like, there's intruders coming. And the artwork that Michael does, like, Michael's artwork is always on point, but this issue, like with the coloring and the artwork here, is fantastic. It's like chef's kiss with how awesome some of these panels are, and the lighting is for these scenes. Like, you ever seen where Rita's like about the transform, and like mid-transformation, you sort of see like the sort of like arm piece of the suit forming, and it's like all these dragon scales forming. It looks freaking amazing. Like the texture you can see in her suit is like the dragon scales within it. It looks so freaking awesome. Like, it looks amazing. But John and Valentina soon show up, and this is where things get really freaking crazy. So this is where Janessa shows up. So Janessa and Rita start throwing hands right away, and Rita tells like everyone to step outside because, you know, the adults are talking. And Orion like has this moment where he's like, look, I think we're all adults here. And she just fires a blast in his direction, and it misses him like just by an inch. And Orion's like, all right, okay, then I think Doobie needs to go potty, so I'll take care of that. So while Rita and Janessa are fighting, you've got Mark and John talking. And while they're talking, you've got Orion and Valentina finally like sort of piecing it together, like that maybe that John and Mark have a thing for each other, which is something that Valentina has like pointed out like way back a while ago. It was the issue when they went to sort of like the fancy ball back in like, I think maybe issue 7, and Valentina makes the comment saying, oh, you're upset that we left your boyfriend behind. And Jun's response is like, he's not my boyfriend. And ever since then, you can tell, and it's been set up, that Jun and Mark have feelings for each other. And looking at one of the covers for issue 12, they are definitely probably going to hook up at the end of this. Like, I mean, it's like this forbidden relationship between like an Eltarian and an Elseworlder. So yeah, they're most definitely going to hook up. But also you have this conversation between Orion and Valentina, and it's fascinating because it is also definitely setting up what we'll probably see for Orion in the next story arc. So you have this scene where Orion brings up the moment at the gala that we saw in the flashback way, way back, I think in maybe issue, I can't remember what issue it was, but it was like a while ago. It was one of the flashbacks that we saw. But he brings up by saying, look, some guys were being a jerk and you stepped in, and thanks for that. And Valentina just kind of says, look, I can't imagine what I did that day. I mean, kind of a yellow coward, aren't I? But Orion says, privilege is its own cage, I think. Fear is a nice lock. And she questions Orion by saying, what's your cage, Orion? And Orion replies by saying, look, you're not the only one who is a coward. I'm too afraid to look inside of myself to find out. I do that, I may never come back out. So it looks like Orion's dealing with his own kind of issues here and there. I'm guessing it's his anger issues, because I feel like that one scene at the gala, he was almost ready like to throw hands with those people that were sort of putting him down and like discriminating him for being like a different race. And Orion has been sort of pointed out by Rita by saying, look, he does have this strength, but he holds back most of the time. So it looks like Orion is like afraid of going all out, because if he loses control, then who knows like what it will become. So I am curious to see what's going to happen with Orion moving forward, because the solicitations have teased that Orion and Rita are going to be going on some kind of adventure within the next like couple of issues in the next story arc. So I'm definitely curious to see where that's going to go when this first story arc wraps up. So the fight between Janessa and Rita is brought to an end because, TZ breaks it up because, he knew that Janessa didn't come here with the intent to sort of harm Rita, and that's why he broke it up. And I love Rita's response by saying, traitor. But this is where Rita and Janessa have this back and forth, where Janessa says to Rita by saying, look, you act as though I had personally wronged you somehow. And Rita says, not specifically you, but I've dealt with your type before. So hearing that line saying that she's dealt with Eltarians could mean a number of things. We know Rita's history with Zordon of Eltar. Is she referring to Zordon of Eltar or referring to someone else? Because, that line does give it away with her history with Eltarians, because, this Rita is still a mystery. But then Janessa then goes on to say, and this is the crazy part, saying, look, I know you took it easy on me to feel it out. We both live in the Grey Witch. We cannot find a way to meet in the middle. So if this was them sort of like holding back, imagine if they went all out. That could have been a crazy freaking battle we could have won if they went all out, because, Rita is really powerful in this universe. And if she was holding back in that battle, same with Janessa, then I wouldn't want, I want to see them go all out against each other, but I couldn't imagine the damage they could have done if they went all out. So the two essentially come to a truce where they're going to work together to get Volar far away from here as possible, because, Jun being a Power Ranger and Volar having that knowledge, well, Volar's going to hunt down his own son and probably take him out, kill him, no doubt about it. So the two come to a truce and they'll figure out what they're going to do after this battle ends. And again, the artwork here done by Michael is freaking amazing. So after that, we then cut to the VR Troopers, who are characters we haven't seen in a while. We haven't seen them since, the big battle when Rita first transformed. And they're given new orders to assist Volar on the battlefield as he plans on apprehending the other Rangers. So they have to assist Volar on the battlefield, and the VR Troopers are unsure about this order that they've been given, because you have this scene where they look at this monitor and you can see Lauren on the background. And although you don't see what exactly happened to her, it did look like she was probably interrogated by Volar to get information from her. So the other VR troopers know by saying, look, if he did this to Lauren and her father, then John, then Valentina, then who knows what's going to happen to the rest of them. But Ryan says, you heard Zash, we have our orders. It's up to us what we do with him. And we kind of know what they're going to do with him because, we've seen them on the solicitations where they're joining the battle against Volar. So no doubt about it, they're going to assist the Rangers in this final battle. And this is when we get the final last couple of pages in Power Rangers Prime where you see something flying right towards them. And John says, get back now. And crashing down, you see Volar decked out in full Eltarian armor right now. And once again, the artwork done by Michael here is freaking amazing. Like, when you see him just crashing down, he's like on one ground, you see the ground crumpled before him, you see all the debris flying up, and you can see like the blur effect done on it as it's flying all over the place. It looks freaking amazing. So Volar finally confronts his son, and once again he says, I suppose I should not be surprised, given what I've learnt about you, boy. And he says, you have always been a traitor to your people, and you have made your choice, have you not? Then show me the Eltarian you've become. And he's got this big smirk on his face as it zooms in on him. But John says, I'll show you the Ranger that I've become. And again, we get this awesome splash page of all the Rangers morphing, and we see their animal themes behind them in full detail now. They're not sort of like silhouetted. We get a good look at them, and they morph, and they prepare the fight. And that's where the issue ends. And once again, Power Rangers Prime continues to be a really fantastic series, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next in like the next, I nearly said the final issue, but it's not the final issue, it's the final issue of the next story arc. But overall, this issue was great, and I can't wait to see where Melissa is going to take it because she is setting up so many things for the final story arc or for the final issue of the story arc, but not only that, future story arcs from what we know of with the solicitations if you've been keeping up with them. So, with that said, I'll bring this review of Power Rangers Prime to a close. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, take care, and bye. What's going on, guys? Ash here, and we are back with Power Rangers Prime issue 12, and this is the end of the very first story arc within this series. But don't worry, Power Rangers Prime will continue, which is something we've talked about on the channel before, and of course we will continue covering Power Rangers Prime until the series ends. But this issue was freaking fantastic. Everyone involved went all out for this issue. Melissa, Michael, Joanna, Ed, everyone went all out for this issue. Because this issue wraps up the very first story arc, but it's setting up future things we'll see later down the line in the next story arc. So, without any further ado, let's get into Power Rangers Prime issue 12. So in last month's issue, it pretty much ended with Volar showing up on the battlefield and the four Rangers being John, Orion, Mark, and Valentina ready to throw down with Volar. And right away, Volar wastes no time and he jumps into action, fighting off our Rangers because, he wants to destroy Rangers and he wants to crush his son because his son is now a Ranger. And this guy is a freaking menace on the battlefield. Like, this guy is a titan compared to the Rangers in more ways than one. We'll get to that in a bit. But one thing to note is when he's fighting off against the Rangers, his giant weapon that he's using has this weird glowing energy to it. And I've got no idea what's up with that. I don't know if it's an artistic choice. Is this guy controlling green chaos energy? I'm not entirely sure. But it's noted that when he sort of goes to swipe with his weapon, especially at the panel where he's facing off against Valentina, is that his giant weapon has this green energy surrounding it. So no idea what's up with that, no idea what's going on with that, and I don't get the feeling we'll get an explanation, but something's up with that weapon and it's worth taking note of. So Volar's able to easily make do with the four Rangers, and it looks like things are looking bad for John until Lauren jumps in to save him. And I honestly thought that Lauren sold out her teammates, but that wasn't really the case. But she was rescued by the VR troopers. So one thing we learned is that Lauren gave up the location of the Rangers, but she never said she would abandon them. And I really like that because we've got all 5 Rangers coming together, facing off against the first big threat within this series. So this is basically the team coming together, facing off a threat that is much more powerful than them. So Voller says that he's basically going to imprison the 5 Rangers, throw them in a hole so deep that sunlight will never find them, along with their family members. And this is when the Rangers face off against Jon's father. And I gotta say, the artwork and the coloring done here looks freaking amazing. And the Rangers are able to work together and basically hold their own against Voller. They're able to knock him down on the ground. And it looks like the Rangers have actually won the fight. And it looks like they've got him surrounded. But this is when things get freaking crazy, because what Voller ends up doing, and this is where things I was not expecting to take a turn. So Voller, what he ends up doing is says, look, do you think you've won because you've outnumbered me? I have fought monsters far more dangerous than you, boy. And do you know how? And this is when we have all of these different pieces of metal coming towards him. And he says, becoming one myself. And what we see Voller do is he surrounds himself within all this armor and all this metal, and he's almost taking on this sort of Zord form, you could say. And even Lauren calls it out by saying he looks like a Zord in a way, and he almost looks as big as a Zord as well because he towers over the Rangers. So this form here looks really freaking cool. I will say that, like, the design that we got here looks freaking amazing because, like, all the armor and all the tentacles coming out of him, it looks freaking amazing. So the Rangers are sort of dodging and ducking and weaving while they cut up the tentacles and stuff like that. And this is when TZ jumps into battle, fully grown, as we get their Zord facing off against with Voller's giant form. So unfortunately, we don't see the Megazord combination in this issue. A lot of us, including myself, were speculating or theorizing that we would actually see all 5 Megazords coming together within this issue to sort of see their Zords combined. But we don't really get that. But it is teased that we will see that in later issues, but we'll touch on that in a bit. So TZ is able to hold on his own against Voller. And while this fight is going on, you've got Rita and Janessa watching. And I was wondering, how come Rita isn't exactly getting involved in this fight? Because, you know, she's part of the team. Shouldn't she be helping? But Rita is watching and observing because she says if they can't win this battle, then they don't deserve to be called Rangers. So basically Rita is sort of testing what they can do, because if they can't defeat this threat here, then what use are they against other big threats that are going to show up within this sort of comic series or within this universe? So Rita is sort of being that mentor that is sort of stepping to the side and saying, okay, this is their first big challenge. They need to overcome this challenge or they won't be able to fight what else is out there within this universe. And I can kind of understand where she's coming from because, you know, Rita's proven to be very powerful. She could probably, like, solo Voller if she, like, really tried and probably didn't even want to break a sweat against the dude. But she needs to show the Rangers or let the Rangers know that, hey, they need to work together. They need to come together as a team to fight this threat, because there's more threats on the way. So during the battle, Jon jumps in to fight Voller, but he's easily grabbed. And what Voller plans on doing is using him as a human shield, because you have this moment where Mark prepares his weapon and he gets told not to use it because, you know, Voller is using a shield. And as he's sort of holding Jon up by the neck, he says, "This is another test, boy. Will you fail again?" And you have this moment where when he's moved out of the way, it looks like Mark is able to take the shot and pierce his armor, and this gives Jon an opening to deliver a punch, knocking Volar out, and he's down on the ground. And as Volar's like down for the count, Jun replies back by saying, "I didn't scream this time." And I like that callback because it's a callback to the flashback we got back in issue 10 when Jun did that test and he ended up screaming, and this is him sort of overcoming that, but not only that, overcoming his father. So it looks like the battle is finally over, and Jun thanks Rita and Janessa for helping them, or helping him, or helping us, I should say. And this is where things get interesting, where Rita stands over Volar and says, "Your memories are tainted black, and with them there's no going back." So even Janessa is annoyed with Jun thanking her by saying, "Don't thank me. You think there are no consequences here? Look at what she's doing to your father." And what Rita is doing is basically erasing Volar's memories. And what she's doing is she's sort of rearranging them. And this is where Janessa says, "The more you do not know, but the better. But at the end of this, he will be labeled as a traitor and he will be buried deep in some Eltarian prison. Do you get pleasure out of that?" And even Jun's like saying, "No, I don't. He's my father." So it shows that like even though Jun has like these daddy issues, he still cares about what's going to happen to the guy because, you know, he's getting his sort of memories erased. And not only that, he's going to get thrown into a prison. So I do wonder where that's going to go moving forward, because eventually this guy's probably going to get his memories back, and when he does, he's going to become like a freaking menace again, a freaking unstoppable force. But there's probably going to be bigger threats out there within the Power Rangers Prime universe. But this is where sort of like the battle wraps up, and we have this sort of aftermath. But we have one final word from Janessa by saying, "You are my son. I will destroy worlds for you, but even I have my limits. And if you want to save your friends, then you must learn to live without them." And this is something we were sort of hinted at with the solicitations where Jun is going to go back to Eltar, and we'll see that later on in the issue. But we sort of have the aftermath of the battle, and Jun is preparing to leave for Eltar. So he hugs his friends goodbye, he goes outside, and you've got Mark taking out the trash, and Jun and Mark meet up and they share a passionate kiss with each other. And it's a nice little moment. I mean, this sort of relationship between the two of them had been built up for the longest time, and now it finally pays off. So we'll see where that relationship between the two characters is going to go moving forward, and we'll see what's going to happen in issue 13 and moving forward. So we'll see what Melissa is going to do with these two characters. So after that, we then have Valentina and Ryan still breaking up, where Valentina has this moment where she breaks down crying, and it's kind of a sad moment where she says, "I'm not a perfect person, Ryan. I know that, but we both know I never really liked me." So Valentina is someone who's never been happy with herself. "I liked being a ranger, it makes sense. And I know this world isn't ready for whatever that means, because I'm not ready for it either. But I think I need it, and I think I need them," referring to the Rangers. And Ryan says, "More than you need me?" And she says, "You know the answer to that." And she says, "Always, in the end, I'll always need you." So Ryan ends up speeding off on his bike, so who knows if we'll see Ryan show up again in the series, whether he's going to go off for a couple of issues and show up later, or we'll see where his story goes in the VR Troopers comic book story. Maybe that ties into this whole talk that they have, I'm not entirely sure. But it looks like Valentina and Ryan ended up breaking up, so who knows if we'll see Ryan again in the nearby future. So in the aftermath of this as well, you cut to the command center or the power chamber we've seen before, and Bulk has a request for Rita by saying, "Make me a Power Ranger." And Rita's like, "No, I'm not going to do it." And Bulk's like, "Please." And Janessa walks in and says, "No more Rangers." And this is where Rita is like an absolute tease to her by saying, "Oh, Janessa, many others have attempted to give me orders and landed them in much darker place, and they've landed in a much darker place because of that." And Janessa's like, "Look, we have an understanding, Rita. Your freedom depends on it. Now tell me you'll play nice. No morphing, no Rangers. this world does not need you. And Rita's like, and what if I have a different opinion? And Janessa's like, not even your magic will save you. So after that, the sort of aftermath continues where you have Lauren going back to the prison cell where her father was being kept, and I believe it's Jaden as well. And Orion's like, look, are you sure this is the place? And Lauren's like, he was. I saw him, Orion. They took him. They took my brother. They took everything. And Orion's like, not everything. We still have each other. And I know we're in the wake of this, and it doesn't feel like much, but I lost my entire world. Which I do wonder, I get the feeling we're going to explore the next story arc for Orion, because, you know, his entire world was destroyed. And I do wonder when we're going to explore that and get the Orion-focused flashback in the nearby future. Like, it has to be soon. Like, I feel like he's like one of the other Rangers that hasn't had his focus issue, and I'm sure that Melissa is planning on it very soon with sort of teasers of Rita and Orion sort of going off on their own in the next story arc. So we'll see where that's going to go moving forward. Now, the epilogue does continue, but it is drawn to a close as Rita makes this big speech. You've got Valentina sort of working at the markets, and what's really interesting is you do see a close-up on this cloaked figure. Whether that's some random civilian or maybe someone who's going to be important, I've got no idea, but it looks like Valentina's sort of helping people out in need. You've got Mark and Orion sort of looking at the schematics of what they plan on doing, and I'm really freaking excited for it, where Mark says, how many more do you think we can build before they catch on? And Orion says, I'm thinking 5. So that means they're going to build 5 more Zords like TZ, and I'm really looking forward to that. Lauren has sort of moved into the university going under the name Lauren Rhodes. John, it looks like he's probably moved back to Eltar, but Rita does say about this by saying, the world needs Power Rangers, so we will become what this world needs, a prime version of a Ranger. We will hide in plain sight, we will assimilate, and when the next challenge comes, we will be ready. And that's pretty much where this first story arc ends. And I gotta say, it was pretty freaking cool. I really enjoyed this issue. The fight scene was really cool. I think it wrapped up really well because it's setting up things for future issues, and we'll see where that's going to go moving forward. But overall, the first year of Power Rangers Prime, in my opinion, was really solid, and I can't wait to see where Melissa is going to take the series moving forward next. So, with that said, I will bring this video to a close. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will see you guys later. Peace out, take care, bye.